The voice note that changed everything. Arrogant, but dangerously attractive. 11 words. One accidental swipe. And Ava Carter just sent them to every single person at Wolf and Sterling, including the man she was talking about. She stood frozen in the elevator, phone shaking in her hand, as notification after notification lit up her screen. Laughter from the hallway. A door slamming somewhere above her. And then, a single message from the top floor. From him. My office. Now. If you love stories about impossible chemistry, office scandals, and the kind of love that burns slow before it burns everything down, stay with me until the very end. Drop a like. And tell me in the comments what city you're watching from, so I can see how far this story travels tonight. The thing about Ava Carter was that she never overslept. Not in the 4 years she'd worked at Wolf and Sterling Strategic Consulting, not during the brutal months her mother was sick, not even the time her apartment radiator exploded at 3 in the morning and she'd shown up to a 7 a.m. client meeting with wet hair and a coffee stain on her blazer. But on the morning of October 14th, she overslept by 42 minutes. She woke up to the sound of her phone buzzing against the nightstand like an angry wasp. One eye opened, then the other. Then the full, sick realization landed in her stomach like a stone dropped into a well. No, 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 no. She threw the covers off and hit the floor running. Her bare feet slapped against cold hardwood as she stumbled into the bathroom, her reflection catching her mid-lurch, hair a wreck, mascara smudged under her left eye from the night before, the pillow crease of a long and restless sleep still pressed into her cheek. You've got to be kidding me. She brushed her teeth while pulling on tights. She pulled on tights while answering a text from her assistant, Mia, that just said, "Where are you?" She answered Mia while stepping into the one pair of heels she could actually run in, and by the time she grabbed her coat, her bag, and her half-dead laptop, she was doing all of it with a piece of dry toast clenched between her teeth. The elevator in her building took exactly 93 seconds to reach the lobby. Ava knew this because she'd timed it once, on a bet with herself, during a month when she was trying to shave every unnecessary second off her morning. Today, those 93 seconds felt like 93 years. Outside, Manhattan was doing that particular thing it did in mid-October. The air sharp and clean, the sky a color somewhere between blue and the inside of an oyster shell, leaves turning in the little sliver of park across from her building. On any other morning, she might have noticed it. Today, she just flung her arm up for a cab and prayed. Wolf and Sterling, she said, sliding into the back seat. 57th and Park. And please, if you speed, I will tip you like a man who just won the lottery. The driver, an older guy with a gray mustache and a gentle smile in the rear view, raised both eyebrows. Rough morning, sweetheart? You have no idea. He didn't speed. He drove like her grandfather, both hands on the wheel, 3 full seconds at every stop sign, a polite nod to every pedestrian. Ava clenched her jaw so hard she felt a molar shift and pulled out her phone to start triaging the damage. Mia. The Harrington meeting moved to 9:15. Mia. Adrian's asking where you are. Mia. Ava Sayim. Mia. Ava? He asked twice. She typed back with trembling thumbs. In a cab. Be there in 10. Stall him. The 3 little dots pulsed for a long time before Mia's answer came through. You can't stall Adrian Wolf. Nobody stalls Adrian Wolf. You stall Adrian Wolf the way you stall a hurricane. Ava closed her eyes and let her head fall back against the cab's sticky leather seat. Adrian Wolf. Even the name had a weight to it. He was 36 years old, the youngest managing partner in the firm's 30-year history, and according to Business Week, one of the 7 most influential strategists in North America. He'd taken over the consulting arm 3 years ago and doubled revenue in 18 months. He was the reason Wolf and Sterling had a client list that read like the front page of the Wall Street Journal. He was the reason Ava had moved to New York in the first place, the reason she'd left a perfectly good job in Chicago and signed a lease on a 400-square-foot studio she could barely afford, because working under Adrian Wolf, even as a junior strategist, was the kind of resume line that rewrote a career. And he was, objectively, a nightmare. Not in the cliched ways. He didn't scream. He didn't throw things. He didn't forget people's names or insult them in meetings. In fact, he was almost unnervingly polite. He said thank you when you held the door. He remembered that Richard in accounting had a daughter named Hazel. He asked the cleaning staff about their weekends by name. But he had eyes like a man running a diagnostic on your soul. And when he didn't like something, a pitch, a slide, a word choice in the middle of a 700-word memo, he would simply look at you perfectly still until you felt it, until your stomach turned itself inside out. And then he would say very quietly, "Do it again." He had once made a senior director cry. Not by yelling, by asking her 4 times in a row in that same impossibly calm voice, "But why?" Ava had made a personal vow on her first day that she would never, ever be the reason Adrian Wolfe asked her why. She had broken that vow exactly 16 times in 3 years. She had also, in the privacy of her own kitchen, at 10:30 at night, with a glass of cheap red wine and her best friend Claire on speakerphone, said some things about Adrian Wolfe that she would never, under any circumstances, say out loud at work. The cab pulled up to the tower at 8:57. Ava threw a wad of bills at the driver, yelled, "Thank you, God bless," caught herself, said, "You, sir, I mean, you, thank you, you," and flung herself out of the car. The lobby of Wolfe and Sterling was a cathedral of glass and travertine, 30-foot ceilings, a Calder mobile turning, slow and careless, above the security desk. Ava's heels hit the marble floor in a frantic staccato as she power-walked toward the turnstiles, trying to look like a woman who had her entire life together and was merely in a modest hurry. "Morning, Carl," she gasped at the security guard as she scanned her badge. Carl, who had been at the front desk since the Clinton administration, gave her a long, slow look over the top of his glasses. "You're cutting it close today, Miss Carter. You have no idea." "I have some idea." He nodded at the elevator bank, where 2 other strategists from her floor were just stepping through sliding doors. "Your boss rode up 10 minutes ago. He wasn't whistling." Ava made a small, strangled sound that might have been a laugh in a previous life. "Godspeed," said Carl. She caught the next elevator just as the doors were closing, squeezed in beside a delivery guy holding a tray of lattes, and punched the button for the 42nd floor. The elevator hummed. The delivery guy chewed his gum. Ava's phone vibrated in her pocket, and out of pure reflex, pure need to know, pure "someone please tell me the building is still standing," she pulled it out. "Mia." "He's in his office. Harrington team is in the big conference room. I told Adrian you were on a call with legal." Mia. "Do not make me a liar, Ava." Mia. "Also, are you okay? Seriously?" Ava's thumbs hovered. And it was here, in the elevator, with the delivery guy humming tunelessly and the numbers climbing toward 42, that the bad thing happened. The thing that would later be described in the retelling at 3 separate company happy hours as the fastest fall from grace in Wolfe and Sterling history. Because Ava was tired and Ava was rattled, and Ava had promised herself on the elevator that she would send Claire a voice note, just a quick, venomous, cathartic 30 seconds of rage. Because Claire had texted her at 6 a.m., a text Ava hadn't seen until just now. "Claire, don't forget what you promised. If Wolfe makes that face at you today, you send me a rant." And Ava, on autopilot, in the elevator, one hand clutching her laptop bag and the other holding her phone, hit the little microphone icon on Claire's most recent message thread and started talking. At least, that's what she thought she did. "Oh my God, Claire." Her voice came out in that specific, breathless, low-frequency women use when they are trying not to be overheard in a public place. "I'm so late. I am so late. And you know what's worse? You know what's worse? He's going to do that thing. He's going to look at me like I'm a water stain on his desk. He's going to ask me why, Claire. He's going to ask me why, and I'm going to die. I'm going to actually, literally die." The delivery guy glanced sideways at her. She turned slightly toward the wall. "And the worst part," she hissed, "the absolute worst part is that it doesn't even matter how much I prep or how good my decks are, because he's Adrian, you know? He's arrogant, he's smug, he's got that whole, like, I was a child genius and now I'm a man genius thing going on, and he knows it, Claire. That's what's so infuriating. He knows." The elevator dinged. 38th floor. 2 more people got in. Ava turned further toward the wall, shielding her phone with her shoulder like a teenager texting in class. "He's arrogant," she whispered. "But, like, okay. And this stays between us, I swear to God. He's arrogant but dangerously attractive, and I hate him for it. And I hate myself for noticing. And I hate that when he walks into a room, it's like somebody turned the thermostat up 4 degrees. And I hate, Claire, I hate that he has no idea. He has literally no idea, because to him, I'm just staff, The elevator dinged again. 42nd floor. I have to go. He's going to kill me. Please text me something funny at lunch. I love you. Bye. She jabbed the stop recording button with her thumb. She hit send. She shoved her phone into her coat pocket. She did not look at her screen. If she had looked at her screen, she would have seen that the voice note was not, in fact, in her thread with Claire. Because when Mia had texted her 30 seconds earlier, the push notification had opened into a different conversation. A conversation that lived in the Wolf and Sterling internal messaging app. A conversation Ava had opened 2 weeks ago for a firm-wide logistics ping about a holiday party and had never closed. A channel called WS, all staff. 572 recipients, including the managing partner. Thus, Ava didn't know any of this yet. Ava was, at that particular moment, stepping out of the elevator onto the 42nd floor and taking her first deep, centering breath of the morning. Okay, she said to herself under her breath. Okay, you're fine. Nobody died. You have a presentation at 9:15. You have your slides. You have your notes. You are a professional. She walked past reception. Janet, the receptionist, looked up at her with an expression that Ava, at the time, mistook for normal morning pleasantness. In retrospect, it was the specific expression of a woman watching a car drive slowly toward a cliff. Morning, Janet. Morning, Ava. She walked down the main hall. 2 strategists from the Harrington team looked up from their laptops and then, in perfect unison, looked back down. A junior analyst stepped out of a conference room, saw her, made a small squeaking noise, and stepped back in. Ava didn't notice. She was rehearsing her opening line in her head. Good morning. Thank you all for your patience. I had a brief call with legal that ran long, but I am ready to walk you through the revised Q4 positioning. She rounded the corner toward her office. Mia was standing up at her desk, white-faced, hands pressed flat against the glass of the little partition, watching her approach like a woman watching a building burn. Ava. I know. I'm sorry. I overslept. Don't lecture me. I need coffee. Where is Ava? Where are my notes? Did you print the updated deck? I swear if facilities lost the binders again. AV. Mia's voice was loud enough that 3 heads popped up over cubicle walls down the hall. Ava stopped. She really looked at Mia for the first time. Mia's mascara was smudged. Mia looked like she'd seen a ghost. Mia looked like Mia had, in fact, personally been a ghost for the last 7 minutes. Mia, Ava said slowly. What? Mia's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. Check your phone, she said. What? Check your phone. Ava reached into her coat pocket. She pulled her phone out. The screen was a wall of notifications. Hundreds. They were still coming in, scrolling up and disappearing before she could read them. Slack pings. Text messages. 2 missed calls from numbers she didn't recognize. A voicemail from her mother, which was impossible because her mother had passed away 2 years ago. Until she looked closer and realized the notification was from a woman named Linda in Human Resources, whom she'd saved in her contacts with the same first name, and her brain had just autofilled. Her thumb hovered. She tapped the first Slack notification. A GIF. A cartoon cat, eyes enormous, whispering into a microphone under the caption, "When you send the voice note to the whole company." Ava's lungs stopped working. She tapped the next message. And the next, and the next. Her knees felt loose the way they did sometimes on the subway when the train braked suddenly and you had to grab for the pole. Mia, she whispered. Mia, please tell me you didn't. You sent it to all staff. Mia's voice was barely audible. You sent it to literally everyone, Ava. You sent it to Adrian. Ava's vision went gray at the edges. I didn't. You did. I couldn't have. I was sending to Claire. You did, Ava. Oh my God. Yes. Oh my God. Yes. Oh my. I know, honey, I know. Sit down. I don't want to sit down. Sit down anyway. Ava didn't sit down. She couldn't. She was standing in the middle of her own office with her coat still on, and her bag still over her shoulder and her phone buzzing in her hand like a dying animal, and she was watching her career, 4 years of work, every late night and skipped weekend and canceled date, evaporate in real time. She could hear voices now, down the hall, a ripple of laughter. She could hear someone, somewhere, attempting a terrible imitation of her voice, dangerously attractive. Mia. How many people heard it? Mia winced. Define heard. How many, MIA? At a minimum? The floor? At a maximum? Mia gestured helplessly at the air, at the invisible network of 42 floors of human beings with phones. It's a voice note, Ava. People share voice notes. Share? Somebody put it on the group chat for the associates. Oh no. And somebody put it on the group chat for the senior partners. Oh no. And I think, and I'm not sure about this, but I think someone might have put it on the Wolf and Sterling alumni chat. Oh my God, Mia. I'm telling you what I know, Ava. He's going to fire me. He's going to fire me, Mia. He's going to fire me. And then he's going to call every other firm in this city, and he's going to tell them not to hire me, and I'm going to end up selling candles on Etsy, and my mother is going to roll over in her... Ava. I'm going to have to move back in with my dad. In Akron. I am 31 years old. I am not moving back to Akron. Ava. And my rent is due on the 1st, and I just signed a 2-year lease, and Ava. What? Mia looked past her, over her shoulder, and her face went completely, utterly blank. It was the specific blankness of a person who has just seen something behind her coworker that her coworker has not yet seen. It was the blankness of the Greek chorus in a tragedy, just before the hero figures out what the audience already knows. Oh no, Ava said. He's behind me, isn't he? Mia nodded, very slightly. How long has he been there? Long enough. Ava closed her eyes. She took a breath. She prayed, silently and without any real belief, to whatever cosmic force managed the scheduling of personal catastrophes, and she asked it, very politely, for a building fire. Then she turned around. Adrian Wolf was standing in the doorway of her office. He was wearing a charcoal suit. No tie. The top button of his shirt undone. His hair was a little damp at the edges, like he'd come in straight from the gym in the basement and taken 2 minutes in the locker room. His hands were in his pockets. His face was unreadable. He was looking at her the way a man looks at a math problem. Ms. Carter. His voice was perfectly, terrifyingly calm. Mr. Wolf! She could hear herself. Her own voice came out 4 notes too high. Hi. I'm sorry I'm late. I had a call with legal. Yes. Mia told me. Yes. About which matter? Ava blinked. I'm sorry? The call with legal. About which matter? Ava opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. She looked at Mia. Mia looked at her own shoes, very intensely, as if her shoes had started speaking Latin. Because I was in a meeting with our general counsel at 8:30, Adrian said, still in that same impossibly pleasant voice. And she didn't mention that she had a call with you. Right. She did, however, mention something else. Ava wanted to die. She wanted a meteor. She wanted the ceiling to collapse in one clean, merciful moment. Do not make me stand here while this man slowly, patiently, and with surgical precision takes me apart in front of my assistant. God, please, I will do anything. My office, Adrian said. 10 minutes. Yes. And Miss Carter. Yes. He looked at her. Really looked at her. His eyes were a gray-green color she had, at various unprofessional moments over the last 3 years, privately referred to as trouble. Bring your laptop. Then he turned and he walked out. Mia exhaled a breath she'd apparently been holding for the entire conversation. Oh my God. Mia. Oh my God, Ava. Mia, listen to me. I need you to do something for me. Anything. If I don't come back in an hour, I need you to clean out my desk. Take the plant. Take the good stapler. Shred the red folder in my bottom drawer. Do not, under any circumstances, let anyone read the red folder. Ava. Promise me, Mia. You are not being fired. I am absolutely being fired. You don't know that. He said 10 minutes, Mia. He said it like it was a countdown. Okay, that's fair. That was a countdown. Mia. But you don't know. Ava sat down finally on the edge of her desk. She put her hands over her face. Her laptop bag slid off her shoulder and hit the floor with a little thump. Her phone was still buzzing. She could hear, very faintly, from some open door down the hall, the tinny sound of her own voice playing through someone else's speaker. He's got that whole, I was a child genius and now I'm a man genius thing. She made a small, wounded noise into her palms. Ava. Can I ask you something? Is it true? Ava lifted her head very slowly. Mia was trying, and failing, not to smile. I'm not judging. Is it true? The thing about him being Mia. Because I always thought, get out of my office. Technically, it's my office too. We share the... Go MIA. Mia went. Ava spent 7 of her 10 minutes sitting absolutely still on the edge of her desk. She spent the 8th minute looking at herself in the little mirror she kept in her top drawer and trying to put her mascara back on with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. She spent the 9th minute telling herself, in her mother's voice, her mother had been a nurse for 35 years and had possessed the unflappable calm of a person who had once delivered a baby in the back of a bus, that she was an adult woman. She had graduated top of her class. She had written a strategy memo at 26 that had been cited in the Harvard Business Review, and she was not going to walk into that office looking like a scared intern. She spent the 10th minute walking the longest hallway of her life. Adrian's office was at the corner of the floor, 2 walls of glass. A view of Midtown that, on a clear morning, could make a grown man weep. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves on the back wall, full of books he had visibly, actually read. Ava had checked once when she was in there alone with a file, and she'd seen the underlined passages, the pencil notes in the margins. A long, low walnut desk with almost nothing on it, a single fountain pen, a closed laptop, a small black and white photograph in a silver frame, which no one in the office had ever gotten close enough to identify. Adrian's assistant, Priya, looked up as Ava approached. Priya had worked for him for 5 years. Priya had seen things. Priya was, Ava suspected, the reason Adrian Wolfe was able to function as a human being at all. Go in, Priya said quietly. He's waiting. Priya. If I don't come out, you'll come out. But if I don't, Ava, go in. Ava went in. Adrian was standing at the window. His back was to her. His hands were still in his pockets. He didn't turn. Close the door. She closed the door. The click of it sounded like the lid of a coffin. Sit down, please. She sat. The leather chair was cold. She set her laptop on her knees like a shield, a very thin, very ineffective shield between herself and whatever was about to happen. She waited. He kept looking at the window. She waited some more. Outside, 42 floors below, a siren wailed up Park Avenue and faded. Miss Carter. Yes. Do you know how many people work at this firm? 572, sir. He turned around. 573, he said. You forgot Mr. Chen in the mailroom. He started Monday. Right. 573 people, Ms. Carter. As of 9:04 this morning, all 573 of them have a strong opinion about my character. Ava looked at her laptop, at her hands, at the floor, anywhere but at him. Sir? I've listened to it 3 times. Her head jerked up. 3 times, Miss Carter. Back to back. Because I wanted to make absolutely sure I had heard what I thought I had heard. He walked around his desk. He did not sit down. He leaned against the front of it, arms crossed, looking down at her. You do an excellent impression of me, by the way. The part about why. That's very good. I should have charged you rent. Sir, I am so, don't apologize yet. But don't apologize yet, Ms. Carter. I'm not finished. She closed her mouth. He looked at her for a long moment. There was no heat in his expression, no anger. If anything, he looked faintly, bleakly amused, the way a man looks at a weather forecast predicting an inconvenient amount of snow. 4 years, he said. You've been at this firm for 4 years. Yes, sir. I've watched you for all 4 of them. She didn't know what to do with that, so she didn't do anything. In those 4 years, he said, you have written, by my count, 11 memos that I have personally forwarded to clients. You have saved 3 accounts that senior strategists had given up on. You have the lowest attrition rate of any junior on any team you've ever worked with, which means the people who report to you don't quit, which is, Ms. Carter, the single most difficult thing to achieve in this industry. He paused. You also on 2 separate occasions sent reply all emails to the firm with typos in the subject line. I'm aware, sir. You once included an attachment called final underscore v7.pdf. I'm aware of that too, sir. And today you sent a voice note to the entire firm in which you called your managing partner, and I quote, he tilted his head as if pulling the phrase from deep memory, which Ava suspected was a lie because he had, by his own admission, listened to it 3 times, arrogant but dangerously attractive. The silence that followed had a physical weight to it. Ava felt her face go from white to pink to a shade of red that she was fairly certain had not previously existed in nature.
Sir, do you think I'm arrogant, Ms. Carter? Honestly. Yes, sir. A little. Sometimes. He nodded, as if she'd confirmed something he already suspected. That's fair. Sir, the other part is more complicated. The other part. The part about dangerously attractive.
Ava had never in her life wanted more urgently to vanish. She had, as a child, once tried to will herself invisible during a fire drill and had been deeply disappointed when it didn't work. This was worse. Sir, she said very carefully, I would like to formally request that we pretend the last 2 minutes of this conversation never happened. I will quit. I will walk out of here. You will never have to see me again. I'll sign anything. You're not quitting, Ms. Carter. Sir, and I'm not firing you. She blinked. Her ears were ringing. I'm sorry? He walked around his desk. He sat down in his chair. He folded his hands, very neatly, on the walnut surface in front of him. He looked at her. The Kepler account, he said. Do you know it? Of course I know it. It's the biggest account we've taken on in 18 months. $300 million restructuring, 6-country rollout. 2 competing factions on the client's board who hate each other, and an outgoing CEO who is, in my personal opinion, a fool. Yes, sir. I need a lead strategist on it. Ava's brain, which had been operating at a very low level of function for the last 20 minutes, stalled out completely. Sir, I need a lead strategist, he repeated slowly, as if speaking to a child, and I'm giving the project to you. She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. You'll report directly to me, he said. I'll be involved at every stage, every memo, every deck, every client call. You will work harder, Ms. Carter, in the next 4 months than you have ever worked in your life. You will not sleep the way normal people sleep. You will cancel plans. You will be on planes. You will hate me, possibly by week 3. Sir, do you want the account? Sir, yes or no, Ms. Carter? Yes or no? She looked at him. Really looked at him. At the slight crease between his eyebrows. At the way his hands were folded, perfectly still, on his desk. At the tiny scar at the corner of his mouth that nobody in the office knew the story of. At his gray-green, impossible, infuriating eyes. Yes, she said. Yes, sir. Good. He leaned back. That's what I thought. Sir, she said, and she hated the way her voice came out small. I don't understand. After that, why would you, Ms. Carter? Yes. I'm going to say something, and I want you to listen to it carefully, because I'm not going to repeat it, and I'm not going to address what you said on that voice note. Not today. Possibly not ever. Do you understand me? Yes, sir. I've been looking for a reason to give you this account for 6 months. You haven't given me one. You've given me good work, and steady work, and careful work, but you haven't given me the one thing I needed, which was a reason to be sure you'd fight for it. He paused. Today, you gave me a reason. Sir, the voice note is not... I don't care about the voice note, Ms. Carter. But The voice note is a small, embarrassing human mistake, and this office will stop talking about it in approximately 4 days. What I care about is what I heard in it, before the part about me, the part at the beginning. She stared at him. The part? What part? You said, it doesn't even matter how much I prep. You said, to him I'm just staff. He tilted his head slightly. You were angry, not at yourself, at me, for not seeing you. Sir, I've seen you for 4 years, Miss Carter. I was waiting for you to notice. He stood up. The conversation was apparently over. Priya will send you the Kepler files. You'll meet the team at 2. I expect a written strategic framework on my desk by Friday at 5. Go. Yes, sir. She stood. Her legs were not quite hers. She walked to the door. Her hand was on the handle when his voice caught her. Miss Carter. She turned. He was looking at her the way he had that first time, 4 years ago, in her final interview, like he was running a diagnostic on her soul. Only now she wasn't sure what the result was. Now she wasn't sure whether he had found what he was looking for or whether maybe she had. For what it's worth, he said quietly, I don't think arrogant is fair. Exacting, perhaps. Noted, sir. The other part, he said, and something moved at the corner of his mouth, not quite a smile, not quite anything. We'll deal with on a separate occasion. He turned back to the window. Ava opened the door, stepped out, and walked, very carefully, past Priya's desk without making eye contact. She walked down the long hallway. She walked past the glass conference room where, she now noticed, approximately 11 people were pretending not to stare at her and failing. She walked into her own office, and she closed the door, and she leaned her forehead against the cool glass of the partition, and she let out one long, shaking breath. Well, Mia whispered, I'm running the Kepler account. Mia dropped her pen. You're what? I'm running Kepler, reporting to him, starting now. Ava. I know. AVA. I know, Mia. That's the biggest. I know. He handed you the biggest. I know, Mia. Mia stared at her. Ava stared at her own hands, which were, she noticed, still shaking. Outside, down the hall, somebody laughed. Somebody else shushed them. The sound of the phone buzzing in her pocket had finally, mercifully, slowed down. Ava, Mia said, very slowly, what did he actually say to you in there? Ava thought about it for a long moment. About the window, about the walnut desk, about the scar at the corner of his mouth, and the gray-green eyes and the quiet, impossible voice saying, I've seen you for 4 years. I was waiting for you to notice. He said, she said finally, that the voice note didn't matter. Okay. And he said we'd deal with the other part on a separate occasion. Mia's jaw dropped. Ava. Don't. Ava. Mia, don't. Ava, you realize what that means, right? You realize I said don't, Mia. Mia's mouth snapped shut. She raised her hands in surrender. Ava sat down, finally, at her own desk. She pulled her laptop out of her bag. She opened it. Her calendar had already updated. Priya was terrifyingly efficient. And there it was, a new recurring block every morning at 8 a.m. for the next 4 months. Kepler, A. Carter, /A. Wolf. Ava stared at it. Her phone buzzed. One last time. A message from Claire. Call me the second you can talk. I heard from my cousin who works on 9. Ava. Ava. Are you alive? Ava looked at the message. She looked at the calendar. She looked at her reflection, very faintly, in the dark screen of her sleeping monitor. At the woman who had, 40 minutes ago, walked into this building expecting to lose her job, and who was now, apparently, about to work more closely with Adrian Wolf than anyone else in the entire company. She wasn't sure if she'd been saved or sentenced. She wasn't sure anymore that there was a difference. She put her phone face down on her desk. She cracked her knuckles. She opened a new document, and at the top of it, in clean, careful letters, she typed one word, Kepler. And then, under her breath, so softly that only she could hear it, she said the thing she had been saying to herself every morning for 3 years. The thing her mother used to say. The thing she had carried all the way from Akron and through Chicago and into this glass tower in Midtown Manhattan, into this office, into this impossible, terrifying, newly rewritten life.
All right, she whispered. Let's go.
Outside her door, the 42nd floor was already moving on. Phones ringing, keys clicking, the low hum of a building full of ambitious people with expensive problems. Somewhere, down the hall, two associates were still whispering about the voice note. Somewhere, in the corner office at the end of the glass, Adrian Wolfe was standing at the window, looking out at the city, and he was, for the first time in a very long time, smiling very slightly at absolutely nothing. The rest of that first day passed like a dream she couldn't quite wake up from. Ava moved through it in a kind of fog, half adrenaline, half disbelief. Answering emails she wouldn't remember sending, nodding at people whose names she couldn't quite remember. Smiling too hard at coworkers who looked at her with the specific, sideways curiosity of people trying to decide whether she was about to be promoted or quietly escorted out. By 11, the voice note had, as Adrian had predicted, started to lose some of its heat. By noon, a junior analyst on the Patterson team had fallen asleep in a strategy meeting and snored loud enough to be heard through the glass, and suddenly the 42nd floor had a new favorite story. But the echo of it didn't leave Ava. She felt it in her chest every time she passed the break room. She felt it every time someone's eyes snagged on her a beat too long. And she felt it, most of all, at 2 on the dot, when Priya stuck her head into Ava's office and said, in that quiet, unimpressed way of hers, "Kepler kickoff, big conference room. He wants you next to him." Ava stood up so fast her chair rolled back and hit the credenza. "Easy," Mia muttered from her desk. "Breathe. You look like a woman walking to her own execution." "I am a woman walking to her own execution. You're a woman walking to her own promotion. Same thing, Mia." "Actually, fair." Ava picked up her laptop. She smoothed her skirt. She looked down at her blouse, the one she'd thrown on in the blur of the morning, and noticed for the first time a small coffee smudge near the 3rd button, roughly the size and color of a bad decision. "Oh no." "What?" "I have a stain." "Where?" "Here, Mia, look." Mia leaned in, squinted. "It's tiny, it's fine. Button your jacket." "I didn't bring a jacket." "Ava." "I was late. I was running. I didn't have time to think about jackets." Okay, here." Mia was already unbuttoning her own blazer, the navy one she'd bought on sale at Nordstrom Rack and worn roughly 400 times. "Take mine." "It won't fit." "It'll fit enough." "Mia, you're 5'2". "And you're 5'6". It'll be cropped. It'll look intentional. Just put it on and go." Ava yanked the blazer on. The sleeves ended 2 inches above her wrists. The shoulders felt like a straitjacket. She looked, she was fairly certain, like a woman who had mugged a smaller, more put-together woman on her way up in the elevator. "Perfect," Mia lied. "I hate you." "I know. Go." The big conference room at Wolfe and Sterling was the kind of room designed to intimidate clients. A long glass table that could seat 20. A wall of windows looking south toward the Chrysler Building. Screens on every wall. A coffee service at the back with little silver tongs for the sugar cubes that Ava, in 4 years, had never once seen anybody actually use. 10 people were already sitting at the table when she walked in. Ava knew all of them. Most of them had been there longer than she had, and she could feel the temperature of the room shift the second she crossed the threshold. Not hostile exactly, but measured, curious. The way a pack of wolves measures a new arrival. At the head of the table, Adrian was standing with his hands in his pockets, talking quietly to Marcus Reeve, one of the senior partners. Marcus was 56, silver-haired, and had the permanent tan of a man who spent his weekends on boats. Marcus had, Ava happened to know, been passed over for the managing partner role 3 years ago in favor of Adrian, and had spent the 3 years since being very, very polite about it. Adrian looked up when she walked in. His face didn't change.
"Ms. Carter, sit." He gestured at the chair immediately to his right. Ava felt the small, unmistakable ripple go around the table. The tiny intake of breath, the flick of a glance from one associate to another. The seat to Adrian's right was not a junior seat. The seat to Adrian's right was where Marcus had been sitting 30 seconds earlier, and where Marcus, as Ava sat down, quietly relocated himself 2 chairs to the left.
"Thank you all for making the time on short notice," Adrian said, turning to address the room. "As of this morning, Ms. Carter is lead strategist on the Kepler restructure. She'll be reporting directly to me. I'd like all of you to report to her. A silence. It was not, Ava thought, a hostile silence. It was more like the silence that follows a very large rock falling into a very small pond. Marcus cleared his throat. Adrian, a word if I... Not now, Marcus. It's just, with respect, the client's... Not now, Marcus. Marcus smiled very slightly. The smile did not reach his eyes. Of course. Adrian turned to Ava. Ms. Carter, walk the room through your preliminary thinking. Ava felt every nerve ending in her body come online at once. My preliminary, your framework. Sir, I was told about this account 45 minutes ago. I know what you were told and when, Ms. Carter. I'm asking you what you think. She opened her mouth. She closed it. She felt 10 pairs of eyes on her. Marcus's. Polite and sharp. An associate named Jenna, who had, Ava suspected, been quietly hoping to get this account herself. A man named Philip, who had worked at the firm for 14 years and who had, just this morning, referred to Ava at the coffee machine as that girl with the voice note, loud enough for 3 people to hear. She thought about Akron. She thought about her mother. She thought about the one good piece of career advice she'd ever gotten from a senior woman at her first firm, who had taken her aside after a particularly brutal meeting and said, Honey, when they ask you a question you can't answer yet, don't fake an answer. Tell them what you can see. Ava straightened in her chair. I haven't read the files, she said. I'm not going to pretend I have, but what I know about Kepler from the public filings is that they're trying to restructure while fighting a proxy war. Their CEO is on his way out. Their board is split, and whoever they hire is going to spend 60% of their time managing the politics and 40% managing the work. She paused. She made herself look at Marcus, then at Jenna, then finally at Adrian. Which means the first thing we do is we don't take sides. Not on the board, not with the outgoing CEO, not with the incoming one, not with anyone. We take the whole building, or we don't take the building. Everything else is downstream of that. The room was very quiet. Adrian's face again did not change, but the corner of his mouth moved. The same small, barely there thing she'd seen that morning in his office. And he nodded, once. Go on. I'd need to read the files. You'll have them in 20 minutes. Marcus, please forward everything to Ms. Carter. Jenna, you're on competitive landscape. Philip, you're on operational due diligence. I want a working draft of the framework on my desk by Friday. Yes, Adrian, 3 voices said in a row. He stood. That's all. Ms. Carter, stay behind, please. The room cleared in a kind of choreographed shuffle. Laptops closed, chairs pushed back, Jenna giving Ava a long, thoughtful look on her way out, Marcus pausing at the door to say, pleasantly, Welcome to the account, Ava. Thank you, Marcus. I look forward to working together. Me too. He smiled again, the same smile that didn't reach his eyes, and walked out. When the door clicked shut, Ava was alone in the conference room with Adrian. He didn't sit. He walked over to the window and stood there with his hands in his pockets, looking out at the city. She had noticed over the last 4 years that he did this a lot, faced away from people when he was thinking, as if the view gave him something his own office didn't. That was good, he said quietly. Sir, the answer you gave about not taking sides, that was good. Thank you. But you were scared. It wasn't a question. She didn't try to answer it. Being scared is fine, Ms. Carter. Being visibly scared is not. He turned. Marcus is going to come at you. Not today. Probably not this week. But by the end of the month, he will find a way to put a small, deliberate crack in something you do, and he will do it in front of the client, and he will do it in a way that makes him look like he's helping. Sir, I'm telling you this so you can watch for it. When it happens, you do not react. You do not defend yourself in the room. You bring it to me and we fix it in private. Yes, sir. The other thing. Sir? He looked at her, not unkindly, not kindly either. Take off the blazer. I'm sorry? It doesn't fit you. It fits Mia. Ava's face went hot. I saw the stain, Ms. Carter. It's the size of a penny. Nobody in that room noticed it. Everybody in that room noticed the blazer. Yes, sir. Priya keeps a small rack in the closet by her desk. There's a black jacket in your size. Take it before your next meeting. Sir, I can't just... Ms. Carter. Yes. You are running a $300 million account. You will not do it in your assistant's blazer. Yes, sir. Something flickered across his face. Not a smile, not a softening, but something. He turned back to the window. Go. Read the files. Be at my office at 7 tomorrow morning. 7 a.m. 7 a.m. Yes, sir. She was at the door when he spoke again, his back still to her. Ms. Carter. Sir? You're going to be good at this. It was such a quiet thing, so low and so casual, that she almost wasn't sure he'd said it. But he had. She stood with her hand on the door and her chest doing something complicated and said, very carefully, Thank you, sir. Close the door on your way out. She closed the door. The next 3 weeks nearly killed her, not in a dramatic way, in the grinding, mundane, completely unphotogenic way that careers actually get built. Ava was at her desk by 6:40 every morning. She left her desk at 11. On Tuesday of the second week, she fell asleep in the back of an Uber and woke up at the George Washington Bridge toll booth and had to pay the driver an extra $40 to turn around and take her home. On Thursday of that same week, she cried for exactly 4 minutes in the women's room on the 41st floor, then washed her face, reapplied her mascara, and walked back into a meeting. Mia brought her soup. Claire texted her voice notes she never had time to listen to. Her father called from Akron every Sunday, and every Sunday she told him she was fine. And every Sunday he said, Kid, you sound tired. And every Sunday she laughed and said, Dad, I'm always tired. That's the job. And every morning at 7 a.m. she walked into Adrian Wolf's office. He was always already there. Always. It didn't matter if she arrived at 6:50 or 6:45. She'd walk in, and he'd be at his desk, jacket off, sleeves rolled to the elbow, a cup of black coffee cooling beside his laptop, reading. Always reading. She didn't know when he slept. She sometimes wondered if he did. At first, those meetings were interrogations. He'd hand her back a memo with 3 paragraphs circled and say, Why this word? And she'd answer, and he'd say, Try again. And she'd answer, and he'd say, Once more. And by the third try, she would have sharpened the paragraph until it cut. He was, she realized very quickly, the most exacting human being she had ever met. Not cruel, not petty, just relentless. He did not accept pretty good. He did not accept close enough. He did not accept anything from her or from himself that was not the best version of itself. On a Wednesday, in the 3rd week, he handed her a slide deck she'd been up until 2 a.m. revising and said, This is nearly there. She nearly cried. Nearly, he repeated. Go fix page 11. She went and fixed page 11. By the end of the 3rd week, she had stopped being afraid of him. Not entirely, but the particular stomach-flipping dread of the first day, the one that had made her heels slip on the marble in the lobby, had been replaced by something else, something closer to respect, something, on some mornings, close to a kind of thrill, because he noticed. He noticed everything. He noticed when she changed her coffee order. He noticed when she switched pens. He noticed once that she was limping slightly. A new pair of shoes she'd bought on sale, bleeding her heel raw. And the next morning, there was a small, unobtrusive box of Band-Aids in her bottom desk drawer. Priya had put them there. Priya had, it turned out, been directed to. Ava did not mention the Band-Aids. Neither did Adrian. But she noticed him notice her notice them, and the whole exchange lived in her chest for the rest of the day, like a small, warm stone. The rest of the office noticed, too. That was the part that was hardest to live with. The whispers from the voice note had faded, yes, but they'd been replaced by a different kind of whisper. Lower, slyer, more patient. Ava would walk into the break room and 2 associates would stop talking. She would step into the elevator and feel a conversation die mid-sentence. In the women's room on the 41st floor, a junior analyst she barely knew had once looked up from the sink and said, with a smile that wasn't really a smile, Must be nice having Adrian's calendar free for you every morning. What? Ava had smiled back. Must be nice, having time in yours to notice. The junior analyst had stopped smiling. Mia, when Ava told her about it later, had laughed so hard she'd snorted coffee onto her keyboard. Oh, Ava, you are going to get eaten alive. I'm doing my job, Mia. I know you are, but it's not your job they're mad about. It's not their business.
No, Mia said, more gently. It's not. But it is their hobby, and they're not going to give it up.
The person most determinedly unwilling to give it up was Marcus Reeve. He started slow. The week after the kickoff, he sent Ava a very polite email suggesting a quick catch-up about the Kepler account, and she spent 45 minutes in his office while he walked her, slowly and patronizingly, through the basics of restructure work as if she were an intern. She sat there with her hands folded in her lap and took notes she didn't need because she had learned from two mothers, her own, and the woman who had given her the career advice, that the fastest way to disarm a man who wanted to condescend to you was to let him completely and then go back to your desk and do the work better than him. The week after that, Marcus forgot to loop her into a client email. He accidentally copied the CFO of Kepler on a preliminary draft that hadn't been approved. On a Friday, he told the team, with a smile, that he'd be sitting in on Ava's Monday call with the board, just to support. Ava did not react in the room. She walked straight back to her desk, wrote Adrian a 2-line email, and closed her laptop. Adrian's response came back in 40 seconds. Noted. I'll handle it. Good. On Monday, Marcus did not sit in. She never asked Adrian what he'd said to him. Adrian never told her. But on Tuesday, Marcus smiled at her in the hallway and said pleasantly, "Morning, Ava." And Ava smiled back and said, "Morning, Marcus." And both of them understood exactly what had happened. She was winning. It was the strangest feeling, because winning in this office did not look like she'd imagined it. It did not involve dramatic speeches or triumphant moments in conference rooms. It looked like getting up at 6. It looked like reading 300 pages of a regulatory filing on a Sunday. It looked like being so tired on a Thursday night that she ate cold cereal out of the box for dinner and fell asleep in her work clothes and woke up on Friday still wearing her heels. It also looked increasingly like Adrian Wolfe. Well, the first time it happened, she wasn't sure if it had happened at all. It was a Tuesday, late, maybe 8:30. They'd been in his office for an hour going through the revised financial model. She'd walked him through it twice. He'd made her walk him through it a third time because there was a number on page 6 that felt wrong to him, even though the math checked out, and he wanted her to explain the assumption behind the number. By the end of it, she had a mild headache and a deep, grudging respect for his ability to find a thread of daylight in a wall. "Good," he said finally, closing the laptop. "That works. Thank you, sir. It's 8:30, Ms. Carter. You can probably stop calling me sir after 8. Noted, sir." He looked at her. The corner of his mouth did the thing. "Go home," he said. "Eat something. Sleep." "I will." "You won't." "I won't." "I know." She stood. She picked up her laptop. She turned toward the door. And she would swear to this later, to Claire, over a glass of wine on a Sunday, 3 weeks after the fact. She was fine. She was walking to the door. She was not thinking about anything except how badly she wanted a sandwich. And then she caught him looking at her. Not at her face. At her. The way a person looks at another person when they think that person isn't watching. It was barely anything. A half second, less. His eyes flicked up from his laptop, tracked her across the room, registered something. She couldn't tell what, she couldn't name it, and then slid back down to his screen, and his face was closed again, completely, as if it had never opened. Ava walked out. She walked past Priya's desk. She got into the elevator. She wrote it down 42 floors. She stood in the lobby for a full minute before she realized she hadn't moved. In the cab home, she called Claire. He looked at me. "Hi, Ava. Good evening, Ava. How was your day, Ava?" "Claire." "What do you mean he looked at you? People look at each other. That's how—" "Not like that." "Like how?" Like that." There was a pause. Then Claire said very slowly, very clearly, the way a woman speaks to a friend who is balanced on a ledge, "Ava, listen to me." "I'm listening." "You are in the most important professional moment of your entire career." "I know." "You are running a $300 million account reporting directly to the managing partner." "I know." "The managing partner who 6 weeks ago you accidentally called dangerously attractive in front of the entire company." "Claire, I am not telling you what to do." "I know. I am asking you, as your best friend, to be very, very careful."
Ava watched the city blur past the window of the cab. Park Avenue in November. A woman walking a tiny white dog. A man yelling into a phone outside a hotel. I know, Claire. Ava, I know. Claire was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, in a much softer voice, Are you okay? I'm tired. I know you are.
I haven't slept more than 5 hours a night in 3 weeks. I know. I don't have time for this, Claire. I don't have time for any of this. I have a board call on Monday and I haven't finished the framework and my dad keeps calling and… Ava. What? Is he good to you? Ava blinked at the cab window. The question caught her somewhere she wasn't expecting. He's hard on me. That's not the same thing. I know it's not. Then is he good to you? She thought about the Band-Aids. She thought about you're going to be good at this, said Lowe into a window. She thought about the 2-line email, I'll handle it, and the way Marcus had stopped sitting in on meetings. Yes, she said, he's good to me. Okay. Okay. Then go to sleep, honey. Call me tomorrow. Ava hung up. She paid the cab driver. She rode the elevator up to her apartment. She didn't eat the sandwich. She fell asleep in her work clothes again, and she dreamed in fragments of a long walnut desk and a window full of city light. The second time it happened, she was not the only one who noticed. It was a Friday morning. Kepler's general counsel was in town from Chicago, along with 2 members of the board, and Adrian had convened a small, high-stakes meeting in his office. Just the 3 of them, Adrian and Ava. She'd spent the previous night reworking the deck until 2 a.m. She was running on 4 hours of sleep and a cup of coffee so strong it had started to taste like a feeling rather than a beverage. The meeting went well. Better than well. Kepler's general counsel, a woman named Eleanor in her late 50s with the precise, economical movements of a surgeon, asked Ava 3 difficult questions in a row, and Ava answered all 3 without looking at her notes. Eleanor sat back in her chair, looked at Adrian, and said, You've built a good team here. Ms. Carter built the team, Adrian said. I just signed the offers. Eleanor's eyes flicked to Ava. I see. When the meeting ended, Adrian walked Eleanor and the 2 board members to the elevator himself. An honor, at Wolf and Sterling, usually reserved for clients worth above $100 million. Ava started packing up the decks. She was halfway through when Eleanor came back. She came back alone. She closed the office door behind her. Ms. Carter. Yes, ma'am? May I give you some advice? Of course. Eleanor sat down slowly in the chair Ava had just vacated. She folded her hands in her lap. She looked at Ava for a long, measuring moment. I'm 61 years old, she said. I've been a general counsel for 22 of those years. Before that, I was a litigator. Before that, I was a summer associate. You know what I was best at as a summer associate? No, ma'am. Reading rooms. Reading rooms, Ms. Carter? I was very good at reading rooms. It's the skill nobody teaches you, and it's the skill that ends up mattering more than the law. Yes, ma'am. I read this room, Ms. Carter. Ava was very still. I want to be very clear, Eleanor said. I am not accusing you of anything. I am not accusing him of anything. I have worked with men like your Mr. Wolf for 40 years, and I know the difference between a man who crosses a line and a man who is standing next to one. Your Mr. Wolf is standing next to one. You are also standing next to one. I would like to tell you, as a woman who has been in rooms like this her entire life, that this does not have to end badly. Ma'am, but it can. It can end very badly, and when it does, Ms. Carter, it ends badly for you. Not for him. For you. Always for you. I understand. Do you? Ava looked at her, at the soft gray of Eleanor's eyes, at the small gold earrings, at the 2 thin lines of gold at her wrist. She thought, for no reason she could name, of her mother. Yes, ma'am, she said. I do. Good. Eleanor stood. She smoothed her skirt. She picked up her handbag. Then I will tell you what I wish someone had told me at 31 in a room like this. The work is the work. Don't confuse one for the other. And if you ever have to choose, always choose the work. You can build another career. You cannot build another version of yourself. She walked to the door. Ma'am? Eleanor turned. Thank you. Eleanor smiled. It was the first time her face had really softened. "You'll do well, Miss Carter. You have the face of someone who pays attention." She left. Ava stood alone in Adrian's office for a long moment, Dex still in her arms, and tried to figure out if she'd just been blessed or warned, or both. When Adrian came back in, a minute later, he looked at her face and said, "What?" "Nothing, sir." "Miss Carter." "Yes?" "Don't lie to me in my own office." She almost laughed. She didn't. "She gave me advice." "About the account?" "About life." Adrian's face did something complicated. He walked around his desk. He didn't sit. He stood behind his chair with his hands on the back of it, and he looked at her for a long, careful moment, the way he had looked at her that first day. "Eleanor is good at giving advice," he said. "Yes, sir." "You should take it." Ava looked at him. He looked at her. "Yes, sir," she said. "I know." He nodded, once. He sat down. He opened his laptop. He did not look up again. "Close the door on your way out, Miss Carter." She closed the door. She walked back to her own office. She sat down at her own desk. Mia looked up from her monitor and said, "How'd it go?" "Good," Ava said. "It went good. You look weird." "I'm tired." "You look weird in a new way, though." "Mia." "Yeah?" "Shut up, please." Mia shut up. That weekend, in a bar in the West Village, Ava told Claire about Eleanor, about the "you are standing next to a line," about the "always choose the work." She did not tell Claire about the look Adrian had given her across the room 2 Tuesdays before. She did not, in fact, tell Claire about any of the small compounding things she had been collecting like stones in her pocket. The Band-Aids, the email, the way he said good, the way he said go home, the way he did not, ever, once, in 6 weeks, cross the line that Eleanor had been so precise about. That was the thing. He did not cross it. He stood next to it. He looked at her across it. He made her better at her job than she had ever been, at a pace she had not known she was capable of, under a pressure she would not have survived under anyone else. And he did not ever cross it. Which was, Ava was beginning to realize, somehow worse. Because a man who crossed a line was a man you could fight. A man who stood next to one was a man you had to decide, over and over again, every single day, not to walk toward. She was, she thought, walking toward him. Slowly. Not all at once. Not in any way she would ever have been able to prove to Claire, over drinks in a bar in the West Village. But steadily. In the way she lingered, sometimes 2 or 3 seconds longer in his doorway than the meeting required. In the way she'd started putting on lipstick before their 7 a.m. S. Not red, nothing he'd noticed, just a nude pink that made her feel less like a woman who'd slept 4 hours. In the way she'd stopped being afraid of the silences between them and started, on some mornings, almost enjoying them. She did not tell Claire any of this. She barely told herself. She was a professional. She was running a $300 million account. She was doing the best work of her life. And she was, slowly, walking toward a line. On the last Monday of November, Adrian called her into his office at the end of the day. It was already dark out. The city was lit up below them, all amber and moving. He was at the window as he always was, with his hands in his pockets. "Kepler wants us in Chicago," he said, without turning. "When?" "Wednesday, through Friday, board off-site. They want us presenting to the full board on Thursday morning." "The full board?" "All 11. "Sir, that's—" "I know what it is, Ms. Carter." She tried to steady herself. "Who's going?" "You and me." "And just you and me?" The silence that followed was the longest silence of her life. "Sir?" "Ms. Carter. Is that appropriate?" He turned. He looked at her for a long moment. His face was unreadable again. The window face, the diagnostic face, the face he used on difficult clients and on himself. She could not tell what he was thinking. She could not tell, in that instant, what she was thinking. "It's efficient," he said finally. "The rest of the team is needed here. You're leading the account. The client wants the lead strategist in the room. I'll be there because I'm the managing partner." "Yes, sir." "It is, Ms. Carter, entirely appropriate." "Yes, sir." He waited. She waited. The city hummed 42 floors below. If you would prefer I bring someone else. No, sir. I will bring someone else, Ms. Carter. No, sir. I'll go. You're sure? I'm sure. He looked at her another long moment. Then he nodded, once. He turned back to the window. Priya has the itinerary. We fly Wednesday morning. Wear something warm. It's going to snow. Yes, sir. Miss Carter. Sir? Go home. Sleep. I mean it this time. Yes, sir. She walked to the door. She had her hand on the handle when he spoke again, his back still to her, his voice so low she almost didn't catch it. You've done good work, Ava. It was the first time he had ever called her by her first name. She did not turn around. She did not say anything. She opened the door. She stepped out. She closed it behind her very, very carefully, as if the sound of the latch might wake something that had, in 6 weeks of sleeping, finally stirred. At her own desk, Mia was already packing up. Mia took one look at Ava's face and put her bag back down. Oh no, Mia said. Oh no, oh no, oh no. Don't. What happened? Nothing happened. Ava. Nothing happened, Mia. I'm going to Chicago on Wednesday. With yes. Just yes. Mia sat down very slowly in her own chair. Ava. I know. Ava. I know, Mia. Outside, 42 floors below, the city kept humming. Inside Ava's chest, something that had been sleeping for 6 weeks, maybe for longer, maybe for her whole life, turned over once, quietly, and opened one eye. She put on her coat. She picked up her bag. She walked out of the building, into the cold, into a night that smelled like November and exhaust and the first faint promise of snow, and she walked 3 blocks before she realized she was smiling. She stopped walking. She stood on the corner of 53rd and Madison, and she looked at her reflection, very faintly, in the dark window of a closed storefront. Oh, Ava, she said softly, to the woman in the glass. You are in so much trouble. The woman in the glass did not disagree. She slept badly Tuesday night. It wasn't that she hadn't slept badly before. She had a degree in sleeping badly, a PhD in lying flat on her back at 3 a.m, staring at the water stain on the ceiling and rehearsing client calls. But this was a different kind of bad. This was the kind where she'd closed her laptop at 11, brushed her teeth at 11:15, climbed into bed at 11:30, and then, at exactly 11:42, opened her eyes and known, the way you know the weather is about to turn, that sleep was not coming. She got up at 2 and made herself tea. She got up again at 4 and reorganized her carry-on for the 3rd time. By 6, when the alarm went off, she was already dressed, already wearing the navy dress she'd decided on at 5 a.m. after changing her mind twice, already standing at her window watching the snow come down in fat, slow pieces onto the street below. It was going to be a bad day to fly. Her phone buzzed at 6:15. Priya. Weather's moving. Adrian wants to leave from your building. Car will be there at 6:45. Teterboro, not LaGuardia. Private. Ava stared at the message. Private wasn't a thing that had happened to her before. Ava's flights, at Wolf and Sterling, were coach flights on Delta. With middle seats she was not senior enough to avoid. Ava packed gum for her ears because the firm did not pay for noise-canceling headphones. Ava had, twice, slept on the floor of the Minneapolis airport. She typed back, Private? Priya's response came back 10 seconds later. Client is paying. Don't overthink it. Wear something warm. Ava didn't overthink it. Not out loud, not to Mia, whom she texted, and not to Claire, whom she didn't. She put on a second sweater. She threw an extra pair of socks in her bag. She stood in front of her mirror at 6:30 and looked for a long moment at the woman looking back. Pale, tired, the faint purple under her eyes no amount of concealer was going to cover. And said to that woman, out loud, in a voice that was quieter than she meant it to be, keep your head on. The woman in the mirror looked unconvinced. The car was a black SUV with tinted windows, and Adrian was already in the back seat when she opened the door. He was in a charcoal coat over his suit, no scarf, reading something on his phone. The driver, a broad-shouldered man named Gabriel, whom Ava had met exactly once, loaded her bag into the back without a word. Morning, sir. Miss Carter? She slid into the seat beside him. Not beside. There was an empty third of the bench between them, enough space that it looked, if you squinted, almost like a courtesy. The door shut. The SUV pulled away from the curb. The snow was coming harder now, the wipers sweeping it in long, lazy strokes across the windshield. "Did you sleep?" "A little, sir." Liar. "Yes, sir." He didn't look up from his phone, but there was, again, that small, barely there movement at the corner of his mouth. The thing she had now seen enough times to know was the closest he got, in public, to laughter. They rode the rest of the way in a silence that was almost comfortable. Ava watched the snow. She watched the gray length of the Hudson slide past. She thought once about saying something, and then didn't. She was learning, slowly, that Adrian's silences were not empty. They were working silences. He was thinking the way some people talk. The airport in Teterboro was small and efficient and absolutely nothing like any airport Ava had ever been in. There was no line. There was no TSA. There was a woman in a Navy uniform who said, "Good morning, Mr. Wolf," and walked them out a side door and across 50 feet of wet tarmac, and then there was a plane. Ava had, honestly, not understood what private was going to mean. It meant 8 leather seats. It meant a small couch at the back. It meant a flight attendant named Rosa, who asked Ava if she wanted tea or coffee or water or champagne at 7 in the morning on a Wednesday, and who, when Ava said, "Just coffee, please, Black," gave her a smile that said she understood exactly what kind of woman Ava was. They took off at 7:20. Ava sat across from Adrian at the little fold-out table. He had his laptop open. She had hers. For the first hour, they worked. He asked her a question about the regulatory timeline on the European rollout. She answered it. He pushed back. She pushed back harder. He looked at her over the top of his laptop for a second longer than he needed to, and then nodded and said, "Fine, that works." Somewhere over Pennsylvania, Rosa brought breakfast. Adrian closed his laptop. Ava closed hers. They ate. Eggs, fruit, a little bowl of yogurt, in a kind of near silence that was broken only by the low hum of the engines and the small clink of silverware. Ava had not realized, until she sat down to eat, that she was starving. She had not eaten dinner the night before. She had not eaten much of anything, honestly, in 3 days. Adrian watched her eat for a moment over the rim of his coffee cup. "When was the last time you had a real meal?" "Sir, Ms. Carter." "Friday, I think. It's Wednesday." "I know what day it is." "So you've eaten, what, toast?" "Toast, soup, a protein bar in the back of a cab." "Miss Carter, I'm fine." "You're not fine." "Sir, with respect, I'm going to be fine if I stop being fine at you." There was a pause. Then he set his cup down, and he did something she had never seen him do in 4 years. He laughed. It was a small laugh, quiet, under his breath, a single soft exhale that moved his shoulders once. But it was a laugh. "Fair," he said. "Eat." She ate. "Do you always work like this?" "Like what, sir?" "Like a woman who is trying to pay back a debt she doesn't owe." Ava put her fork down. It was not, she thought, a question she had been prepared to get from him. Not today. Not in a steel tube 30,000 feet over the earth, with a small flight attendant pretending not to listen 3 feet away, with a plate of eggs between them, with the snow they'd left behind in New York already giving way to a low, flat gray beneath them. "Sir," she said carefully, "I'm not sure what you don't eat, Ms. Carter. You don't sleep. You said thank you to me 3 times in writing for giving you this account. You reply to my emails inside of 4 minutes, even at midnight. You are working harder than anyone on my team, and I am not asking you to. I am curious why." She looked at her plate. She looked at the snow outside the little oval window. She looked finally at him. "I grew up in Akron." "I know." "You know?" "Your file, Ms. Carter. I read your file." "Right." She folded her napkin in her lap. "My mom was a nurse. My dad ran a hardware store. Not a big one. The kind where people came in for a 1/4-inch screw they could have got at Home Depot for less, but they came in because my dad would actually find it for them. He's good like that. He knew everybody's name." "My mom got sick when I was 28. It was fast. She was gone in 9 months. My dad shut the store for 2 weeks after the funeral, And when he opened it again, half his customers came back the first day just to check on him, just to make sure he was eating. Adrian didn't say anything. He didn't move. I moved to Chicago 3 months later. I left my dad. I took a job at my first firm. I worked so hard, sir. I worked so hard my hands shook when I tried to hold a pen some mornings. And then I came here to Wolf and Sterling, and I worked harder. Why? Because she died, sir, and I was 28, and I realized that every single day she'd had was a day she had spent doing something for somebody else. And she never got anything. She just worked, and she was kind, and then she was gone. And I thought, if I don't do something with my life, if I don't make it mean something, she stopped. She hadn't meant to say any of that. She had not meant to say any of that to anyone, ever, let alone to Adrian Wolf at 30,000 feet, over a plate of eggs she had eaten too quickly. Sorry, sir. Don't apologize. Ms. Carter, don't apologize. She looked at him. He was looking at her. Not the diagnostic look, not the window face. A different look. A look she did not have a name for, a look that did something to her chest she was not going to let herself examine while trapped in a flying metal tube with him. I'm sorry about your mother, he said quietly. Thank you, sir. How long ago? 2 years. He was quiet for a long moment. Outside, the gray was breaking up. They were coming down toward Chicago, toward a city she could now see below them, a long gray grid with white edges where the snow had come in off the lake. My father died when I was 19, Adrian said. Ava went very still. Heart attack. He was 49. He was a professor. History. He taught at a small college in Vermont. He was the one who taught me to read the way I read. He would hand me a book, and I'd come back a week later, and he would ask me one question, and the question was never about the plot. It was always about a single word. Why did he use this word? Ava felt her eyes sting. That's where it comes from, she said quietly. The word thing. Sir, I was the oldest. My mother wasn't well. My younger brother was 15. I finished college in 2.5 years because I had to. I took the job. I started sending money home. I did not, Miss Carter, stop moving for about 10 years. Yes, sir. I tell you this, he said, still in that quiet voice, because I recognize you. I recognize the way you work. I recognize what it looks like when a person is running on something that is not strictly ambition. Sir, it will hollow you out, Ms. Carter. I know. I did it. I am, in many ways, still doing it. I am telling you this because you are good at this job, and I would like you to still be good at it in 10 years, and the only way you will still be good at it in 10 years is if you learn how to eat breakfast. She let out a small, shaky laugh. Yes, sir. I'm serious. I know you are. He looked at her a moment longer. Then he picked his coffee cup back up. The moment closed. The plane was banking now, a long, slow turn over the lake, the city coming up beneath them. 10 more minutes, he said. Are you ready for the board? I'm ready. Say it like you mean it. I'm ready. Better. She realized as they taxied toward the little private terminal, smiling. She didn't know exactly when it had started. She didn't want to know. She folded her hands in her lap and watched the snow come down over Chicago, and thought, not for the first time that month, and not for the last, that Eleanor in the gray skirt had been exactly right, and that she was, every day, getting worse at listening. The offsite was at a hotel on North Michigan Avenue, old stone brass fixtures in the lobby, a doorman in a long coat who tipped his hat to Adrian by name. Ava had stayed at hotels on business trips before, but never at this hotel, and never on a floor that required a special key in the elevator to access. The firm blocked a suite for each of us, Adrian said in the elevator. Different floors. You're on 18. I'm on 22. Yes, sir. Do you need anything before the 4 o'clock? No, sir. Eat lunch. Sir? I said eat lunch, Ms. Carter. Yes, sir. The elevator dinged on 18. She stepped out. She did not look back. She walked down a long carpeted hall to room 1814, and she closed the door, and she leaned her forehead against it, and she stood there for a long, careful minute. Then she ate lunch. The 4 o'clock was a prep session with Kepler's general counsel. Eleanor again, Eleanor of the gray skirt and the gold earrings, and 3 of the 11 board members who had flown in early. It went well. Ava had, by this point, been over the material so many times she could have done it in her sleep. She watched Eleanor watch her while she presented. She watched Eleanor's mouth soften, just slightly, at the end, when Ava closed out a difficult question from a board member named Howard with 3 sentences that landed so clean the other 2 board members nodded at the same time. When they broke, Eleanor pulled her aside in the hallway. "You've gotten sharper." "Thank you, ma'am." "In 6 weeks, that's rare." "Thank you." Eleanor looked at her for a moment. "Are you sleeping, Miss Carter?" "Not really, ma'am." "Eating?" "He's making me." Eleanor's eyebrows lifted, just slightly. It was the closest thing to surprise Ava had ever seen on her face. "Is he?" "Yes, ma'am." Eleanor was quiet for a moment. Then she said in that same soft, measured voice, "Interesting." "Ma'am, I said what I said, Ms. Carter, the last time. I meant it. But I will tell you this because you look like a woman who is trying very hard to be a grown-up about something difficult. Sometimes the line moves." "Ma'am?" "The line, Ms. Carter, the one you and I spoke about. Sometimes it's in one place at the beginning, and it's in a different place at the end, and the difference between a good story and a bad one is whether both people moved it together on purpose or whether one person dragged it." "Yes, ma'am. That's all I'll say." She turned and walked away, leaving Ava in the hallway with a question she did not have an answer to. Dinner that night was at a steakhouse 4 blocks from the hotel. Adrian, Ava, Eleanor, 4 board members, and the interim CEO, a man named Peter Grayson, who was, Ava discovered within 5 minutes of meeting him, a moron. He was not a moron about business, exactly. He had run 2 companies before Kepler. He had degrees from places that mattered. He was a moron in a quieter, more specific way. The kind of moron who interrupted women, who confused volume for insight, who had said, within 4 minutes of sitting down at the table, "Well, I love a good strategy, girl." Ava had smiled. She had not said anything. She had watched Adrian's face across the table and seen, very briefly, something she had never seen there before. A small, sharp thing in his eyes, the way a knife flashes once in a drawer when you open it. And then it was gone. And he was smiling politely at Peter, and the dinner continued. It continued for 3 hours. Peter drank 4 glasses of wine. Peter told a story about his college lacrosse team. Peter explained supply chain management to Eleanor, who had been a general counsel for 22 years. Peter, at the 90-minute mark, turned to Ava, put a hand on the back of her chair. Not on her, but close. Close enough that the heel of his palm brushed briefly against the fabric of her blazer at the shoulder, and said, loudly enough for the whole table to hear, "So, honey, tell me, how long have you been working under our Mr. Wolf?" Ava felt the whole table go still, not because of the question, because of the word. Under. It was, she would think later, the specific kind of word that had been chosen on purpose, the kind that could be defended in a sober moment as nothing at all. I just meant reporting to, I didn't mean the kind of word that landed and then floated away and left a woman sitting in a chair deciding whether to have a reaction, knowing that the reaction itself would be the thing anyone remembered. Ava did not have a reaction. She had trained herself over 4 years not to have reactions. She opened her mouth to give the measured professional answer, 4 years, Peter. I've been at the firm 4 years. Mr. Wolf is my direct supervisor on this account. And she did not get to give it, because Adrian had already set his glass down, very gently, on the table. Peter? Peter turned. He was smiling. The smile did not know yet what was about to happen to it. Yes, Adrian? Miss Carter is the lead strategist on your account. Right. Which means she is, functionally, the person responsible for whether your board ratifies this plan on Thursday. Sure, of course, which means she is the person you are going to be working with closely every day for the next 4 months. Well, I know, Adrian, I was just having a little fun with Peter. Adrian's voice was not loud. It had not gone up. If anything, it had gone softer,
but the whole table had gone still, and Eleanor, across from Ava, had lowered her wine glass very carefully and was watching Adrian's face with the same measuring look she had once used on Ava in an office 42 floors above Midtown. "Yes, Adrian." "Take your hand off the back of Miss Carter's chair."
Peter blinked. He looked down. He moved his hand. He made a small laugh, the kind of laugh a man makes when he has realized, about a second and a half too late, that the room has turned on him. "Adrian, come on, I didn't—" "The word you used was under." "I didn't—" "The word was under, Peter, in front of your general counsel, in front of 4 members of your own board, in front of me, and in front of Ms. Carter, who is, as of this morning, the person your company is paying a very large amount of money to save. Look, if you ever in your life use that word, or any word like it, about Miss Carter or any woman on my team, in any room I am in, I will walk out of the room and I will take my team with me, and I will call your board chair before my plane is off the ground, and I will tell him why." The silence that followed was the loudest silence Ava had ever heard. Peter's face had gone, in sequence, white, then red, then a kind of mottled purple. He opened his mouth. He closed it. He picked up his wine glass. He put it down. He laughed again, a small, panicked, empty laugh, and said, "Adrian, buddy, I think there hasn't been a misunderstanding, Peter. I apologize to Ms. Carter." Peter turned. His eyes were glassy in that specific way men's eyes get glassy after 4 glasses of wine and 1 public correction.
"Ms. Carter, Look at her, Peter, not at the table." Peter looked at her. "I apologize, Ms. Carter." "Thank you, Mr. Grayson." I didn't mean it the way it—" "Peter." Adrian's voice was again very quiet. "Don't explain. It makes it worse." Peter shut up. There was, in the long 60 seconds that followed, the sound of a fork scraping a plate 3 tables over, and the sound of a waiter pouring wine at the bar, and the sound of Ava's own heartbeat in her ears, and nothing else. Eleanor picked up her wine glass. She took a small, deliberate sip. She set it down. She looked across the table at Adrian. She nodded, once. It was a small nod. Almost nothing. But Ava saw it, and she understood it. And she understood, too, that she had, in front of 7 other people, just watched the precise thing Eleanor had warned her about happen, and that she had also, in the same breath, watched a man handle it the way men almost never handled it, in her experience. 10 minutes later, dinner broke. People began saying their goodbyes. Peter tried once to catch Adrian's eye, and Adrian did not let him. Eleanor put a hand briefly on Ava's shoulder and said quietly, only to her, "Tomorrow, you're going to walk into that boardroom, and you're going to remember this." Then she was gone. On the sidewalk outside the restaurant, Adrian flagged a cab for Ava, not for himself. It was snowing again, small hard flakes slanting down through the streetlight. "Get in," he said. "It's 4 blocks, but I'm not watching you walk in this." "Sir, I can—" "Get in, Ms. Carter." She got in. He closed the door for her. He said something to the driver, handed the driver a bill. It looked like a 50, which was an insane amount for 4 blocks, and stepped back onto the curb. Ava rolled down the window. "Sir." "Ms. Carter." "Thank you." He looked at her for a moment. The snow was landing in his hair. He was not smiling. He did not look honestly very much like a man who had just done what he had just done. He looked tired, and he looked cold, and he looked, for the first time in 4 years, a little older than she had ever realized he was. "You would have handled it," he said. "You didn't need me." "Sir? But you shouldn't have had to." "Yes, sir." "Tomorrow morning, 9. Boardroom. Don't be late." "I won't be." "Good night, Ava." He stepped back from the car. The driver pulled away from the curb. Ava watched him in the side mirror, hands back in his pockets, snow in his hair, standing alone on the sidewalk outside a steakhouse in Chicago in November, until the cab turned a corner and he was gone. She did not cry in the cab. She didn't. She pressed the heel of her hand against her mouth for 3 blocks, and she didn't. And when the cab pulled up to the hotel, she got out, and she tipped the doorman, and she walked through the lobby, and she rode the elevator up to 18, and she closed the door of her suite behind her, and then, finally, for about 4 minutes, on the edge of a king-size bed in a hotel in a city that wasn't hers, she cried.
She wasn't sure what the crying was about. She wasn't sure if it was Peter or Adrian or her mother or the fact that somebody had, in front of 7 people, said the word Ms. Carter the way Adrian had said it, like it was a thing worth defending. She wasn't sure, and she didn't want to be. She washed her face. She put on pajamas. She got into bed. She lay on her back in the dark and listened to the hum of the radiator and the distant sound of a car horn 18 floors below. And she thought about her mother, and about a hardware store in Akron, and about a man on a sidewalk with snow in his hair. And she fell asleep. She slept straight through until 5:30 in the morning for the first time in 2 months. The board presentation on Thursday morning was the best piece of professional work Ava Carter had ever done. She didn't know that while she was doing it. She knew it later, watching the recording back in a conference room in New York, watching the version of herself on the screen, the dress, the navy one, her hair pulled back, a small, unremarkable pair of pearl earrings she had worn every good day of her career since she was 23, and thinking with a kind of detached awe, who is she? Where did she come from? She walked them through the framework for 45 minutes. She took questions for another 40. Howard tried to trip her up on the regulatory timeline. She answered him. A board member named Linda tried to trip her up on the European headcount. She answered her. Peter, who had come in 20 minutes late and taken the seat at the far end of the table and not looked at her once, did not ask a single question. When she finished, the room was very quiet for about 4 seconds. Then the board chair, a woman named Maureen, 72 years old, silver-haired, famous in the industry for having almost no facial expressions, closed her folder and looked at Adrian and said, "She's yours?" "She's leading the account," Adrian said. "She'll lead it very well." "I know." "I assume," Maureen said, "we're ratifying." 11 hands went up, including Peter's. Adrian had, through the entire presentation, said exactly nothing. He had sat at the end of the table, legs crossed, one hand flat on the table in front of him, and he had watched her. He had watched the board. He had watched once Peter, a single, long, cold look, right after Peter had come in late, that Peter had felt all the way across the room and not returned. When it was over, when the board had filed out, when Eleanor had squeezed Ava's hand on the way past, a dry, quick squeeze, nothing more, Ava finally let herself look at Adrian. He was already looking at her. He did not smile. He did not stand up. He just looked at her, across an empty boardroom in a hotel in Chicago, and he said in a voice so quiet it nearly didn't carry, "There you are." Ava didn't understand what he meant. She didn't have to. She felt it in her chest, in her ribs, in a small hot place under her sternum that had been quiet for a very long time and was, suddenly, not quiet anymore. She made herself busy with her laptop. She closed it. She picked it up. She said, "Thank you, sir," because she could not think of anything else to say, and she walked out of the room, because if she had stayed in that room for another 10 seconds, she was going to do something that would have been very, very stupid. She rode the elevator down alone. She walked through the lobby. She stood outside in the cold for a minute, in her coat, her breath making a small white cloud in front of her, and she looked up at the gray sky over Chicago, and she thought, very clearly, I have been walking toward him for 2 months, and today, in that room, he walked toward me. It was not a thought she had permission to have. She turned around. She went back inside. She rode the elevator up to 18. She closed the door to her suite. She opened her laptop. She started a memo to the rest of the team about the next steps on the account. She did not yet know what she was going to do about any of it. She only knew, sitting there on the edge of the bed in a navy dress in a hotel room in Chicago, that the line Eleanor had warned her about had moved, and that she had not been the only one who moved it. They flew back to New York on Friday morning, and the snow had stopped. The sky over Chicago had cleared overnight into one of those washed-out winter blues that looked almost warm if you didn't step outside. Ava stood at the window of her suite at 6 a.m. in the same navy dress for a different reason now, watching the lake glitter gray in the distance, and she thought, without meaning to, that she had never felt so tired in her life. Not the regular tired, a different tired. The tired of a woman who had, over the span of a single dinner and a single board meeting, realized something about herself that she had spent a long time not realizing. She zipped her bag. She did not look in the mirror. She was not ready to look in the mirror. In the car to the airport, Adrian was on his phone. He was on his phone the whole way. He took a call from London, and then a call from a partner at another firm, and then a call Ava didn't try to follow because her own phone was buzzing too. Mia, first, wanting every detail about Peter, and then Jenna, asking 3 smart questions about the board memo, and then her father, who did not usually call on Fridays and whose name on her screen made something small and nervous move in Ava's chest. She let it go to voicemail. She would call him back from the plane. Adrian hung up as they pulled into the terminal. He turned to her as Gabriel was unloading the bags, and for a second he just looked at her, his face unreadable in the early morning light, and he said, "You did well." "Thank you, sir." "I mean it, Miss Carter. That was not a standard board presentation." "Thank you, sir." "You're allowed to be proud of it." "I'm proud of it." "Say it like you mean it." "I'm proud of it." "Better." The corner of his mouth did the thing. He got out of the car. She got out of the car. They walked into the little private terminal together, and for a moment, in the quiet, warm stillness of that room, with a woman in a Navy uniform offering them coffee and another private jet visible through the floor-to-ceiling windows, it occurred to Ava with absolute clarity that her life was no longer the life she had been living a month ago, and that she did not know, yet, what kind of life it was going to become. On the flight home, they worked for about an hour, and then they stopped working. It happened without a plan. Ava closed her laptop first because her eyes were burning. Adrian closed his a minute later. Rosa brought coffee. They sat across from each other at the little fold-out table, the winter sun coming in through the oval windows in long, slow stripes, and for a while neither of them spoke. "Can I ask you something, sir?" "You can ask. I may not answer." "The photo on your desk." He looked up. For a second, a real second, not the half second she'd caught that Tuesday night in his office, something moved across his face. Then it settled again. "What about it?" "I've wondered, for 4 years. Nobody in the office knows who it is." "My brother." "Oh." "He was 15 when our father died. He was a good kid, Miss Carter. He was a better kid than I was. He went to the University of Vermont. He was studying to be a teacher." "Was." "He died 7 years ago. Car accident. Icy road." "Oh, Adrian, She stopped. She had not in 4 years called him Adrian. The name had just come out of her, the way her real voice came out when she was caught off guard, and she felt it hang there in the pressurized air of the cabin between them, and she waited for one very long second for him to correct her. He didn't. "I'm sorry," she said more quietly. "I'm so sorry. It was a long time ago." "That's not a real thing. The long time ago. People say it because they don't know what else to say, but it isn't a real thing." He looked at her, just looked at her. "No," he said finally. "It isn't." They did not talk about it again. Rosa brought sandwiches. Adrian ate a sandwich. Ava ate a sandwich. Somewhere over Ohio, she fell asleep, her cheek against the leather seat, and she did not wake up until the wheels touched down at Teterboro. And when she opened her eyes, she saw that Adrian was pretending not to watch her from across the little table. And she saw, too, that he had, at some point during her nap, put his own jacket over her shoulders. She didn't mention it, neither did he. She handed it back to him as the plane taxied. Their hands touched. It was nothing. It was barely anything. It was also, she understood with absolute and unarguable clarity, the first time he had ever touched her. "Thank you, sir." "Miss Carter." They got off the plane. She did not go into the office on Friday afternoon. Adrian sent her home in the car without asking. "Go to sleep," he said through the driver's window before he got into the second car that had come to meet him. "Real sleep. I'll see you Monday." "Yes, sir." "And Ava?" "Sir." "Don't check email until Monday." "Sir." "Ms. Carter, that's an order." "Yes, sir." She slept 11 hours. She woke up on Saturday at noon, and she ate a real breakfast. Eggs, toast, orange juice, and she called her father back. He was fine. He had just wanted to hear her voice. He said she sounded different. She asked different how, and he thought about it for a while, and then he said, "Kid, I don't know, you sound like your mother." She sat in her kitchen for a long time after they hung up. She called Claire. They met for dinner at a little Italian place in the East Village that Claire had been trying to get her to try for a year. Ava told her about Chicago. She told her about Peter and the word under and Adrian's hand on the table going still. She told her about Eleanor and sometimes the line moves. She told her about the photo of the brother and the jacket and the hand on the plane. Claire, who had known Ava for 11 years, who had held her hair the night her mother died, who had once punched a man in a bar in Chicago for trying to take Ava's phone, put her fork down. Ava, I know. You're in love with him. Ava. I know, Claire. I know. Is he in love with you? I don't know. You know. I don't know, no. Ava, look at me. Ava looked at her. You are a woman, Claire said very carefully, who has spent 4 years being in awe of this man professionally. That is not nothing. That is a thing. But this, what you just described to me, this is not that. This is a thing that happens to two people, and it happens to both of them, or it doesn't happen at all. He put his jacket on you. He called you by your first name. He made a man apologize to you in front of his own board. Ava, honey, listen to me. I'm listening. He is in love with you. Claire, he is in love with you and you are in love with him and you work for him and this is a disaster. I know. What are you going to do? Ava picked up her wine. She put it down. She looked at the candle on the table, at the little flicker of flame inside the jar, at her own hands, at Claire's face. She did not have an answer. She had never had less of an answer to anything in her entire life. I don't know, Claire. Okay? I don't know. Okay, honey. I cannot lose this job. I know. I cannot... Claire, this is the job. This is the job I left Chicago for. This is the job my mother... This is... I know, honey. And I cannot... I know. What do I do? I don't know, honey. They sat there for a long time. Claire paid the check. They hugged on the sidewalk. Ava walked home, in her coat, in a night that had gone quiet and cold again, and she did not cry because she had used up her crying in a hotel room in Chicago, and because crying was not going to be useful to her, not here, not in this, not about this. She got into bed at midnight. She stared at the ceiling for a long time. She fell asleep at 2. Monday morning, she was at her desk at 6:35 as usual, and Adrian was in his office at 6:30 as usual, and at 7 a.m. sharp she walked down the long glass hallway and she sat in the chair across from his walnut desk, and for about 11 minutes neither of them mentioned Chicago. He handed her a revised memo. She made notes. He asked her 3 questions about the European rollout. She answered them. He asked her 1 question about the regulatory timeline, and she answered that too, and he nodded, and he said, "Good, send it." Then he closed the file in front of him. He folded his hands on the walnut. He looked at her. "Ms. Carter." "Sir?" "We need to have a conversation." Ava felt her stomach do a small, complicated thing. "Yes, sir. Not now. Not here. Not in this office." "Sir, I'd like to be very clear. I am not speaking to you right now as your supervisor. I am speaking to you as Adrian. The conversation I would like to have with you is one I am not willing to have in this building." "Yes. There's a coffee shop on 68th and Lexington. Small. Corner table in the back. I'll be there tonight at 7:30. If you don't come, we will never speak about this again, and nothing will change between us professionally. The account will continue. Your role will continue. This conversation will simply not have happened." "Adrian, I want to say that again, Ms. Carter, because I need you to hear it. If you do not come, we will not speak of this, ever. I will not hold it against you. I will not treat you differently. I will not make this something you have to manage. Do you understand me?" "Yes." "Say it." "I understand you." "Good." He opened the file back up. Now, about the Frankfurt subsidiary. She did not remember the next 20 minutes of the meeting. She took notes. She asked questions. Her mouth was working. Her hand was moving. Her mind was 1,000 feet above her, floating in a room she was not in, staring down at the crown of her own head. At 7:55, he said, "Thank you, Ms. Carter. That's all for today." She stood. She walked out. She walked past Priya's desk. She walked down the hallway. She sat down at her own desk, and Mia looked up from her monitor and opened her mouth. And Ava said, "Not right now, Mia. Please. Not right now." Mia shut her mouth. Ava closed her laptop. She put her face in her hands. For 11 hours, she did her job. She answered emails. She took a call with the Frankfurt team. She ate lunch at her desk because she had promised him. She drank water. She called her father for 13 minutes about nothing. She left the building at 6:45. She went home. She changed. She put on a gray turtleneck she'd had for years because it was the most comfortable thing she owned and because she didn't want to look like a woman who had tried. She did not put on lipstick. At 7:15, she got in a cab. At 7:29, she was standing outside a coffee shop on the corner of 68th and Lexington, her hand on the door, her breath making a small white cloud in front of her. She did not go in for a full minute. Then she did. The coffee shop was small, almost absurdly so, the kind of place that survived in Manhattan by having 8 tables and no ambition. There was a woman in an apron at the counter. There was a boy in a knit hat reading a paperback by the window. There was Adrian at a small corner table in the back in a dark gray sweater. A sweater, not a suit. She had almost never seen him in a sweater, with 2 cups of coffee already on the table in front of him. He stood up when she walked in. He had never stood up for her before. "You came." "I came." "Sit, please." She sat. She took off her coat. She wrapped her hands around one of the coffee cups. It was not, she noticed, hot enough to have been sitting there long. He had timed it. Of course he had timed it. "Milk, no sugar," he said. "I asked Priya." "Thank you. I'd like to talk to you." "Yes. I'd like you to interrupt me if I say anything wrong. I am very likely to say something wrong. I have not done this in a long time, Ms. Carter." "Stop calling me Ms. Carter." He looked at her. "Ava." "Thank you." "Ava." "Yes." He took a breath. He looked down at his coffee. He looked back up at her. "I have been," he said slowly, "in love with you for about a year and a half." The coffee cup in Ava's hands went very still. The boy in the knit hat turned a page. The woman at the counter wiped down the steam wand of the espresso machine. Somewhere in the distance, a cab honked twice and stopped. "Adrian, I am telling you this," he said, "because I believe I owe it to you. I believe I have been unfair to you for a year and a half. Not because I have crossed a line. I am very, very careful about lines. But because I have stood next to one, and I have looked at you across it, and it is not fair to a person to stand next to a line with them for a year and a half without telling them you are standing next to the line. Adrian, let me finish, okay? I did not give you the Kepler account because of the voice note. I gave you the Kepler account because you were the best person for it, and because I had been looking for a reason to do it for 6 months, and because that morning I realized that I had been looking for a reason partly because I wanted to be closer to you. Which is a corrupt reason, Ava. I know it is. I have spent 6 weeks making sure that the fact that I wanted to be closer to you did not affect how I treated you. I have been harder on you than I would have been on anyone else, because I could not be the man who was easier on you for the wrong reason. I know. Do you? Yes. I know, Adrian. I felt it. Good. I felt it every day. I'm telling you all of this, he went on, because I made a decision in Chicago that I could not keep doing it. I could not keep having the thing I said to you at dinner, at the plane, on the sidewalk, and then coming in on Monday and pretending I had not said it. I will not, Ava, treat you like a thing I'm managing. You are not a thing I'm managing. You're the single most startling person I have met in 10 years, and I have been managing my own face around you for a year and a half, and I'm not going to do it anymore. She was crying, quietly. She didn't know when it had started. She reached for a napkin. He reached for a napkin at the same time. Their hands did the thing hands do. He pulled his back first. I'm sorry, she said. Don't be sorry. I'm not crying because I know why you're crying, Ava. I don't even know why I'm crying. I know. She wiped her face. She took a sip of the coffee. It was the right temperature. She put it down. Can I talk now? Please. I didn't know until Chicago that this was that this was what this was. I thought I had a crush on my boss. I thought I was tired and lonely, and that you were a handsome, difficult man who had noticed me, and I thought my brain was doing a thing. I thought that was all. I thought if I worked hard enough, if I did the job well enough, if I never, ever let it show, it would go away. It would be a thing I carried, like a splinter, and eventually it would work its way out. Ava, let me finish. Okay. And then Chicago, and Peter, and the plane, and the there you are, Adrian, in the boardroom. I know. You said that, and I felt like somebody had opened a window in a room I had not realized was closed, and I sat in my hotel and I thought, oh, this is not a crush. This is a thing that has been happening to me for a year and a half, and I did not know its name. Ava, I know what Eleanor said. What did she say? She said, sometimes the line moves. She said the difference between a good story and a bad one is whether both people moved it on purpose or whether one person dragged it. And I thought I was the one dragging it. I thought I had been dragging it for 6 weeks, walking toward you every morning, and that it was going to end with me being one of those women, Adrian, one of those stories. And Ava, what? You were not dragging it. No, we were moving it, both of us. We have been moving it for a year and a half, and I did not realize until Chicago that you were moving it with me. I thought I was moving it alone. I thought I was a man in his late 30s who had become briefly foolish about a very good strategist on his team. I was prepared to carry it for the rest of my career. Adrian. Yes. I do not want to lose this job. I know. This is not just a job for me. This is everything I know, Ava. I cannot be the woman who you will not be. How? Because we will not let you be. She stared at him. He set his coffee cup down very gently. Tomorrow morning, he said, I am going to speak to the chair of the management committee. I am going to disclose to her that I have developed personal feelings for a member of my team, and that I have reason to believe those feelings are reciprocated, and that we intend to conduct ourselves with complete transparency going forward. She is going to ask me what I am going to do about the reporting line. I'm going to tell her that I'm removing myself from direct supervision of the Kepler account, and that I am handing day-to-day oversight of you, on this account and on all future accounts, to Laura Park. Laura Park is a senior partner. Yes. Laura Park is brilliant. Yes. Adrian, the committee is going to be uncomfortable. Some of them are going to be more uncomfortable than that. 2 of them are going to hate it. Marcus will almost certainly hate it. Marcus will likely try to use it. Adrian, he will not succeed. How do you know? Because the work is good, Ava, and because the work is yours, and because I have spent 6 weeks in that office making sure that everybody at that firm knows exactly whose work the work is. If Marcus tries to turn this into a story about how you got where you are through me, he will be standing in front of 11 board members of Kepler Industries and trying to explain to them why their general counsel on the record told me last week that she thinks you are the sharpest junior she has seen in a decade. Eleanor said that. Ava looked at her coffee. She looked at him. Adrian. Yes. You have thought about this a lot. I have thought about very little else for a week. You were going to say all of this to me if I showed up tonight. Yes. And if I hadn't shown up? I would have done exactly none of it. I would have come in Monday, and I would have been your boss, and I would have carried it. You would have carried it. Yes. For how long? As long as it took. She put her face in her hands for a moment, not crying, just the small physical need to press her hands against her own eyes. He did not touch her. He did not reach across the table. He sat very still, 3 feet away, and he waited for her. Adrian? Yes. If I say yes. Yes. If we do, this, whatever this is. Yes. What are we? I don't know, Ava. You don't know. I don't know. I know I would like to take you to dinner on a Saturday at a restaurant that is not 4 blocks from a client. I know I would like to watch you order something without looking at the price. I know I would like to call you on a Sunday afternoon and ask you if you want to go for a walk. And I would like you to say yes or no, and I would like either answer to be fine. I don't know what that makes us.
I am 36 years old, and I have spent most of my adult life not knowing what that makes anyone, because I have not let myself find out. I would like, with you, to find out.
Ava was crying again. Different crying. Not the hotel room crying. A quieter crying, the kind that happened when a thing you had not let yourself want turned out, against all expectation, to be possible. Adrian. Yes. I don't know how to not be the woman who works 100 hours a week and who doesn't call her dad enough and who I know, and I don't know if I know how to be with somebody. I have not been good at it. I have not tried. I know, and I am going to be bad at it. I'm going to be worse at it, Ava. She laughed, a watery, surprised laugh, the kind that caught her off guard. Yeah?
Oh yes, I'm going to be terrible at it. I have not been in a serious relationship in 11 years.
I work too much. I answer emails at midnight. I have made 4 women I have loved to varying degrees, very unhappy, over the course of my 20s, because I could not stop moving. Yes. I am telling you this because I want you to know. I am not a man who is going to be easy. I am telling you all of my worst things, here, at this table, in this coffee shop, so that you are not surprised by them later. Adrian. Yes. I already knew most of that. Did you? I have been watching you for 4 years. He looked at her. For a moment, the thing at the corner of his mouth was not a small thing. It was a real smile. Small, yes, but real. Fair. She looked at him for a long moment, at the silver starting at his temples that she had never let herself notice, at the little scar at the corner of his mouth that she realized she was finally going to be allowed to ask about, at the gray-green eyes that had terrified her on her first day, and that had terrified her on the morning of the voice note, and that were not right now in this coffee shop terrifying her at all. Adrian. Yes. Yes. Yes what? Yes, just... Yes, go tell the committee. Hand the account over to Laura. Do all of it. And then take me to dinner on a Saturday. He looked down at the table. He let out a breath he had, she suspected, been holding for about 6 weeks. Okay. Okay. Okay, Ava. Okay, Adrian. They sat there for a long time. Neither of them reached for the other's hand across the table, because they were both, for different reasons, careful people, and because the thing they had just said to each other was large enough to need a little space around it. He bought her a second coffee. They talked about nothing. About the boy in the knit hat, about a restaurant he liked in Brooklyn, about a book her father had given her in college that she had never finished. At 9 o'clock, he walked her to the corner. He put her in a cab. He did not kiss her. He did not try to. Good night, Ava. Good night, Adrian. The cab pulled away. She watched him in the side mirror, hands in his pockets, collar turned up, standing on a corner of Lexington under a streetlight, watching her go. And when the cab turned onto 67th, she leaned her head against the cold glass of the window, and she closed her eyes, and she breathed in and out, for a very long time. But she expected things to go badly after that. That was the part she had braced for. She had watched enough movies and read enough gossip blogs and listened to enough of Claire's stories from the fashion world to know that when a woman said yes to a man like Adrian, the next 6 months of her life were supposed to be a kind of minor professional apocalypse. The whispers getting louder, not quieter. The promotion that turned out to be a demotion dressed up. The friends at work who stopped answering her texts. That was not, it turned out, what happened. What happened was that Adrian went to the chair of the management committee on Tuesday morning, as promised. Her name was Helen Shaw. She was 64, and she had been at the firm longer than anyone except the founder, and she had, according to firm legend, once made a client cry without ever raising her voice. Helen listened to Adrian for 45 minutes without interrupting him. She asked 2 questions. He answered them. She then asked him to leave her office for 10 minutes. When he came back in, she told him very simply that she respected his honesty, that she would require the account to be reassigned to Laura Park effective immediately, that she would require a formal HR disclosure signed by both parties, and that she would personally speak to the rest of the committee before the end of the day so that any political noise around the transition could be, in her words, contained at the source. "And Adrian," she said, as he was standing up to leave. "Yes, Helen. If that young woman is half as good as I keep hearing she is, you are a very lucky man." "I know, Helen. Don't waste her." "No, Helen." By Wednesday afternoon, the account had been transitioned. Laura Park took Ava to lunch on Thursday. Laura was 48, wore glasses, had a dry, deadpan sense of humor, and had, at some point in her life, been through her own version of something roughly similar. She did not say so in words, but Ava felt it in the way she spoke, in the careful neutrality of her questions, in the fact that she did not, at any point during lunch, make Ava feel like a woman being handled. "I'm going to be honest with you, Ava," Laura said over the salads. "Please. This is going to be harder for you than it is for him." "I know. I know you know. I'm saying it anyway. For the next year, every good thing you do is going to be something somebody, somewhere, tries to hang on him. Every bad thing you do is going to be hung on both of you. The only way through it is work. Relentless, unglamorous, boring work. You've been doing that anyway. You're going to keep doing it, and you're going to keep doing it with me. And in about 18 months, the noise will die down. And until then, you keep your head down and you let him handle the politics, because he's better at them than you are, and because that is, frankly, the only useful thing he is now allowed to do for you." "Laura." "Yes. Thank you. Don't thank me. I'm the one getting an extra account." Marcus Reeve predictably tried something. On the following Monday, in a partners' meeting, he made a small, pointed comment about the firm's recent disclosure situation and the need for careful stewardship of our junior talent going forward. Helen, who was chairing the meeting, let him finish his sentence. Then she said, without looking up from her folder, "Marcus, if you have a specific concern, bring it to me privately. If you have a general concern, keep it to yourself. This is not a town hall." She turned a page. The meeting moved on. Marcus, who had been at the firm for 22 years, did not raise the subject again, in any meeting, ever. Ava heard about all of this secondhand from Mia, who heard about it from a senior associate, who heard about it from Priya, who had, it turned out, been quietly on Ava's side for about 6 weeks. "Priya?" Ava said when Mia told her. "Priya, Ava. I thought Priya hated me." "Priya doesn't hate anybody. Priya hates Marcus. There's a difference." "Oh my God." Also, apparently Eleanor called Helen last week. Eleanor? From Kepler. Yes. Called her directly. Said, and I'm quoting Priya, who was quoting Helen's assistant, so take this with a little salt, that if Wolf and Sterling did anything, and I mean anything, to slow you down professionally because of this, Kepler would consider it a signal about the firm's culture. Oh my God. Yes. Oh my God, Mia. Helen likes you. Helen doesn't like anybody. Helen likes you, Ava, which is like being liked by a cat that has never liked a human before. Ava sat down at her desk. She laughed, once, a small, disbelieving laugh. And she pressed the heels of her hands against her eyes, and she thought, for about the 4th time in as many weeks, about Eleanor in a gray skirt, about her mother on a night shift in Akron, about the specific, unsentimental kindness of women who did not announce themselves. She was going to be fine. The job was going to be fine. The thing she had been most afraid of, losing what she had spent her entire adult life building, was not, it turned out, going to happen. She was not going to lose it. She was going to keep building it. She was going to, in fact, build it faster and harder and better than before, because for the first time in a year and a half, she was not also, in secret, carrying the weight of the things she had not let herself say out loud. On Saturday, Adrian took her to dinner. It was a small restaurant in the West Village, on a block she had walked past 100 times and never been inside. He was waiting at the table when she got there. He stood up when she walked in. He was wearing a navy sweater and a slightly nervous expression that, she realized with a small, delighted shock, was the first genuinely nervous expression she had ever seen on his face. "Hi," she said. "Hi. You look nervous." "I am nervous." "Why are you nervous?" "Because, Ava, I have not taken a woman to dinner in a very long time, and because the last woman I took to dinner told me at the end of the dinner that I was, and I am quoting her directly, the coldest human being she had ever met, and because I am, at this moment, 36 years old, and because I am sitting in a restaurant in the West Village waiting for a woman I have been in love with for a year and a half to walk through the door, and because I do not, Ava, have any idea what I am doing. She sat down across from him. She reached across the table. She took his hand. It was the second time they had ever touched. Good, she said. Good? I don't want you to know what you're doing, Adrian. I don't know what I'm doing either. That seems actually like the right way to start. The corner of his mouth did the thing. Ava. Yes. Can I say something probably stupid? Please.
I have been since Tuesday. I have been waking up at 4 in the morning because I am afraid I dreamed all of this. Adrian. Yes. You didn't dream it. No? No. She squeezed his hand just once and let go. The waiter came. They ordered. They ate. They talked for 3 hours about things that had nothing to do with the firm, about a town in Vermont where he had spent summers as a boy, about a summer she had spent working at a public pool in Ohio, about a book he was rereading, about a recipe she could never get right. They did not talk about the office. Not once. It was the first meal she had eaten with him in 2 months that did not have a deck in the middle of the table between them. He walked her home. It was cold. It had started snowing again, lightly, small pieces drifting down under the streetlights on Bleecker. At the door of her building, he did not try to kiss her. She liked him for that. She stood there, on the step above him, her hand on the door, and she looked down at him, at the silver in his hair, at the tired gray-green eyes, at a man who had not, in any of his important ways, lied to her once in 4 years. And she said, Adrian. Yes. Come up. He looked at her. Are you sure? Yes. Ava. I'm sure, Adrian. He came up. What happened after that was not, Ava thought later, the important part. The important part was already done. The important part was the coffee shop on 68th and Lexington, and the promise he had made before she had said yes to him, and the Tuesday morning conversation with Helen Shaw that he had had before touching her for the first time. The important part was that she had said yes to a man who had, before she said yes, made it so that saying yes would not cost her anything she had spent her life trying to build. The important part was that he had protected her, not the way men in movies protected women, but the way a grown man protected another grown person, by going first, and by paying the price first, and by making sure before anything else that she would still be her when it was over. The rest was what it was. It was him, at her kitchen table, at 6 in the morning on a Sunday, making coffee for both of them in a French press she hadn't used in 2 years. It was her, laughing at something he'd said, and catching herself in the reflection of her microwave door, in pajamas, no makeup, her hair everywhere, and thinking, without irony, without any of the practiced self-protection of her 30s, that she looked, for the first time in a long time, like a woman who had slept. It was a phone call she made to her father at noon, and the careful, cautious way she told him, and the long silence on the line. And then her father saying, gently, "Tell me about him, kid." And Ava, sitting at her kitchen table in a gray turtleneck, with Adrian across from her reading the paper, telling her father about him, and hearing, for the first time in a long time, her father really laugh. On Monday, she was at her desk at 6:35. Adrian was in his office at 6:30. The firm hummed. The elevators dinged. Priya brought her a cup of coffee, black, which was not the way Ava took it, with a small, dry, "He asked me to," and set it on her desk without waiting for an answer. Mia looked at the coffee. Mia looked at Ava. Mia opened her mouth, closed it, and said finally, "You look different. Do I?" "You look," Mia said slowly, "like somebody who finally slept." "I did." "Good." Ava sipped the coffee. It was for somebody who had hated black coffee her entire life, not bad. She suspected she was going to drink it, going forward, and she suspected Adrian was going to know she was going to drink it, and that none of this was an accident. She suspected a great many things were going to stop being accidents now, and she was, for the first time in a long time, not afraid of that. She opened her laptop. She pulled up the day's calendar. At 9 a.m., she had a kickoff with Laura on a new account, a clean one, a fresh one, her own. At 10, she had a call with Frankfurt. At 11,
she had lunch on the books with Eleanor, who would be in New York. At 3, she blinked at the screen. She blinked again. At 3, she had a recurring weekly meeting that had, until Friday, been on her calendar under the name Kepler, A. Carter/A. Wolf. It had been renamed. At 3 on her calendar in Priya's clean, careful lettering, it now said simply, Coffee, 6th floor. Ava looked at it for a long moment. Then, very quietly, at her own desk, on a Monday morning in December, in the middle of an open-plan office on the 42nd floor of a building on Park Avenue, she smiled. She did not tell Mia what she was smiling at. She did not have to. Mia looked at her screen, looked at Ava, and rolled her eyes and went back to her own email. Outside the window, 42 floors below, the city was moving. Ava started her day. The coffee at 3 o'clock on that Monday was not, in any meaningful sense, a meeting. They sat at a small round table in the corner of the 6th floor cafe, the one that served the building rather than the firm, the one where the baristas did not know either of their names. Adrian had a laptop bag on the floor beside him, unopened. Ava had a legal pad in front of her, also unopened. They talked for 22 minutes. They talked about absolutely nothing of professional importance. He asked her how her morning had gone. She told him about the kickoff with Laura. He told her about a conference in Zurich he had to fly out to at the end of the week. She told him carefully that she would miss him, and she watched his face when she said it, and she saw that she had never said that sentence to him before, and that he had never, in his life, expected to hear it from her. Say it again, he said. Adrian. Say it again, Ava. Please. I'll miss you. Okay. Okay? Okay, I needed to hear it twice. She laughed. She also, unexpectedly, found her throat doing something complicated, and she reached for her coffee so she wouldn't have to look at him for a second. He didn't push. He had, she was beginning to understand, a remarkable ability not to push. At 3:22, he stood up. He picked up his bag. He looked at her. I'll see you tomorrow morning. You won't. No? Not at 7. Adrian, you don't supervise me anymore. We don't have a 7 a.m. He looked at her. For a second, something almost like loss went across his face. Then he caught himself, and the corner of his mouth did the thing. And he said, Right. I know. I have been getting up at 6:20 for 6 weeks to be here before you. I know, Adrian. I don't know what to do with 6 a.m. anymore. Sleep. I don't know how. I'll teach you. He stood there for a moment longer than he needed to. Then he said, Good coffee, Ms. Carter, in a voice low enough that nobody else could have heard it, and he walked out of the cafe, and Ava sat at the little round table for a full 30 seconds afterwards, staring at her own coffee, before she remembered how to move. The rest of that December was, in its own way, the hardest month of her life. Not in the way she'd expected. The office gossip did not, in fact, escalate the way she'd been braced for. Helen Shaw's intervention had done its work. Laura Park's quiet competence had done its work. Eleanor's off-the-record phone call had done its work. The people who wanted to talk about Ava and Adrian mostly did it where Ava couldn't hear. And the people who wanted to talk about it where she could hear were, she discovered very quickly, the people whose opinions she had never cared about in the first place. No. The hard part was smaller. The hard part was the part she had not, when she said yes to him in the coffee shop, thought about at all. The hard part was that being loved by a real person in a real way, with real stakes, was a skill. And Ava Carter, aged 31, was bad at it. She was bad at it in small ways first. On their third Saturday, Adrian took her to a tiny restaurant in Chinatown, the kind of place with a single handwritten menu taped to the wall, and halfway through dinner, her phone buzzed with an email from Laura. Nothing urgent, a question about a memo that could have waited until Monday, and Ava answered it at the table without thinking. She looked up and Adrian was just watching her, with a small, patient expression, and she said, What? Too sharply, and he said, Nothing. Adrian? It's fine. No, it's not. Say it. Ava, I am the last man on earth who is going to give you a hard time about answering an email at dinner. That's not the point. I know it's not the point. Then what? He was quiet for a moment. I know what it is to be the person on the other side of that phone, he said. I have made a lot of women feel the way you just made me feel,
for about 3 seconds, and I didn't understand before why it mattered. I do now. That's all. It's not a lecture. It's an observation.
She put her phone face down on the table. She did not touch it for the rest of dinner. She cried a little in the cab home. Silent, angry crying at herself, not at him. And he did not try to fix it. He did not try to talk her out of it. He held her hand on the seat between them, and he said once, quietly, "Ava, we are going to be bad at this for a while. It's okay." And that was somehow the exact thing she needed him to say. They were bad at it for a while. He was worse at it than she was, some weeks. On a Thursday in mid-December, Ava had a small procedural meltdown. A piece of the Frankfurt work she had been carrying for Laura had gotten fouled up by a German regulator in a way nobody had predicted, and Ava had stayed at the office until 1 in the morning fixing it. She got home at 1:30, and Adrian, who had said he would wait up, was asleep on her couch in his work clothes, his laptop open on his chest, his shoes still on. He had sent her 14 texts over the course of the night, each one more controlled than the last, until the 14th one had just said, "Tell me if you need me." She had not told him. She had not answered any of them. She had been too deep in the work to remember she owed an answer to anyone. At 1:31, she sat down on the floor next to the couch and looked at her sleeping boyfriend and thought, with absolute and unflattering clarity, "My mother did this to my father for 35 years, and I am doing it to this man in our 3rd month. And I need to learn how not to." In the morning, she brought him coffee. She told him she was sorry. He told her she had nothing to be sorry for. She told him, actually, she did. He told her, after a long pause, that he had not slept in the bed in his own apartment for 3 weeks, and that his clothes were, at this point, essentially at her place, and that he had been too afraid to ask her if he should move some of them into the second drawer of her dresser. The second drawer? Any drawer. "Adrian, I will take a shelf. I will take a hanger." "Adrian, you're the managing partner of a firm. You can handle a drawer." "I cannot, Ava. I have discovered this month that I cannot handle any of it. I am 36 years old, and I am relearning how to have a person." That's the worst sentence I've ever heard." "I know. We're going to have to work on how you say things." "I know." She gave him the second drawer. She gave him, over the next 2 weeks, half the closet. She gave him, on Christmas Eve, a key to her apartment, which she handed him across her kitchen counter in a slightly panicked way while saying, "I don't know what the rules are for this, so I'm just going to give it to you." And he took it, and he put it on his key ring, and he did not say anything because he was, she could tell, afraid he would say something wrong. She flew to Akron for Christmas. She flew alone. It was too soon for her father. They had agreed on that, both of them, without having to discuss it. She spent 3 days at her father's house, eating his terrible cooking, sitting on his terrible couch, watching the terrible snow come down over a town that had, since she was 18, been a place she visited rather than a place she lived. Her father asked about Adrian carefully, once a day, and she answered carefully, once a day. And on the last night, with the television on low in the other room, and the two of them at the kitchen table eating leftover ham, her father put his hand over hers and he said, "Kid."
"Yeah, Dad. Your mom would have liked him." "Dad, she would have, kid. She would have said he was a piece of work. But she would have liked him. You know how I know?" "How?" "Because he makes you eat. Your mother spent 30 years trying to make you eat. It took her a lot of patience. Anybody who gets you to eat, he's one of the good ones."
Ava did not cry at her father's table. She did not cry on the plane back to New York either. She did not cry when she got into the cab at LaGuardia and opened her phone to a single text from Adrian that said, "Tell me when you land," even though she had landed an hour earlier. She did not cry, in fact, until she walked into her apartment at midnight on December 27th and found him asleep on her couch again, still in his coat, and realized he had been waiting for her for a long time. She sat down on the floor next to the couch. She put her head on his knee. "Hi," she said quietly. He woke up. He put his hand on her hair. "Hi. I'm back. I know." "Adrian?" "Yes?" "I think I love you." He was quiet for a long time. She thought for one very long second that she had said it wrong, that she had said it too soon, that she had... And then he said, in a voice that was not quite steady, "Ava, I have loved you for 1.5 years. I know." "I am. Ava,
I am very bad at this. I know. I would like to be very clear that I'm saying I love you back. I know, Adrian. I wanted to be sure you had heard it. I heard it. Okay. Okay. They stayed like that, her on the floor, him on the couch, his hand on her hair, for a long time. Neither of them said anything else. The radiator clanked. The snow came down, silent, outside the window. Somewhere a street sweeper went by. Ava fell asleep on the rug. Bye.
January brought the cold and a new reality. The firm had by then gotten used to them. The disclosure forms had been signed, filed, processed, and put away in Helen Shaw's very orderly drawer. The committee had stopped, by mid-January, referring to the Wolf Carter situation at partners' meetings because there was nothing to say about it anymore. Ava was now reporting to Laura, full stop. Adrian was now supervising accounts that did not include Ava's, full stop. They did not pass each other in hallways in a way that drew attention. They did not have lunch at the firm. They did not, under any circumstances, touch each other inside the building. These were rules they had agreed on in the coffee shop on 68th before any of the rest of it had started. They kept them. They were, both of them, people who kept rules they had agreed on. What could not be kept so cleanly was Marcus Reeve. Helen had, back in December, shut him down in a partners' meeting, but Marcus was a man who had been at the firm for 22 years, and he knew how to play a long game. He did not try again, publicly. He simply began, with great quiet patience, to try to undercut Ava in small, plausible deniability ways. A critical comment in a client email Ava had not been copied on, a small concern he raised with Laura at a one-on-one, a little remark dropped to a senior partner at a bar after a Thursday night dinner. The remark, when it eventually got back to Ava through 3 people, was, well, you know, she's good, but let's see how good she is in a year when she has to be good without him. Ava heard about it on a Tuesday in late January. She was at her desk. Mia brought it to her, had in fact been sitting on it for 3 days, trying to decide whether to say anything. Mia was worried Ava would overreact. Mia was worried Ava would underreact. Mia was, by this point in the story, worrying about Ava for a living. Ava listened. She did not overreact. She did not underreact. She sat at her desk for a full minute, her coffee going cold in her hand, and she thought about it in the careful, slow way she thought about difficult client problems. Then she picked up her phone. She did not call Adrian. That would have been the wrong move, the move that proved Marcus right. She called Laura Park. Laura listened. Laura said, "Okay, come to my office. 10 minutes." In Laura's office, Ava sat down in the guest chair, and she laid the whole thing out. The remark, the source, the 3 people who had passed it along. Laura took notes. Laura did not react. When Ava was done, Laura took her glasses off, set them on her desk, and said, "What do you want to do about it?" "Nothing, Laura." "Nothing?" "I don't want you to do anything. I don't want Helen to do anything. I don't want Adrian to do anything. I want you to know it's out there. That's all." Laura looked at her for a long moment. "Why?" "Because if you do something, Marcus wins. If you do something, the story becomes that I ran to my boss's boss's girlfriend's boss, or whatever we are, Laura. I'm still unclear on the org chart, and I had him punished. And then the next story Marcus tells is that I am a woman who only survives by having important people fight my fights for me, which is what he thinks, which is what he has thought for 4 months. And I am not, Laura, I am not going to give him that story." Laura put her glasses back on. "Then what's your move?" "My move is that I am going to be better than him at this job. I'm going to be better than him for a year, and I am going to be better than him in rooms that he is in. And eventually the clients are going to notice, and the partners are going to notice, and Helen is going to notice, and Marcus is going to become the man who keeps losing ground to a woman half his age, and he is going to do the math, and he is going to stop. That's my move." Laura looked at her for another long moment. Then she smiled. It was a small smile, a Laura smile. Dry, quick, mostly in the eyes. "Ava." "Yeah." "You're going to be all right." "I know." "No, I mean, I've been at this firm for 18 years, and I have watched a lot of young women come through, and most of them would have, at this moment, asked me to help them. And I would have. And I would have thought less of them for it without meaning to. and they would have thought less of themselves for it without meaning to. And it would have been a small thing that broke them, slowly, over 10 years. You're not going to break. Laura, don't get weird about it. Just go do your work. Ava went and did her work. It took her 8 months, not 12. By September of the following year, Ava was lead strategist on 3 accounts. 2 of them clients she had won herself. One of them a referral from Eleanor that had walked in the door asking for her by name. In October, Helen Shaw announced that Ava was being fast-tracked for senior associate, 2 years ahead of schedule. In November, at a firm dinner, Marcus Reeve, who had had 3 drinks, tried to make a small, pointed joke at Ava's expense. And the joke landed flat because nobody at the table laughed. And Ava, across from him, met his eyes calmly and raised her glass and said, "To the new year, Marcus." And the whole table drank, and Marcus, after that, gave up. He did not give up on her personally. Men like Marcus did not give up on grudges. But he gave up on the grudge as a public thing. He gave up on the version of the grudge that he could say out loud to other people. And after a while, there were no other people left who wanted to hear it. The other thing that happened that year was that Adrian changed. Not the parts of him Ava loved. Those stayed. The exacting eye, the quiet sense of humor, the small scar at the corner of his mouth that turned out to be from an ice skating accident when he was 11. Those were the permanent parts. Those would be the parts she would know, she thought sometimes, when he was 65 and she was 60, and they were sitting on some terrible couch somewhere arguing about the thermostat. But some parts of him changed. He slept more. He started, at her insistence, seeing a therapist, which he had not done since his brother died. He called his mother twice a week instead of once a month. He came home most nights by 7. He started running again. He stopped, over the course of a very long spring, answering emails at midnight. On a Sunday in April, she found him in her kitchen, in sweatpants, reading a novel, an actual, physical, paper novel, for pleasure. And she stood in the doorway for a moment watching him, and she thought, with the small, sharp clarity that love sometimes gave her, he was not this man when I met him, and I am not the woman he met, and neither of us made the other one into this, but we let each other become it. It was not a smooth thing. They fought. They fought about stupid things, where to spend Thanksgiving, how to split the rent when Adrian finally, at the end of summer, let his own apartment go and moved into hers. They fought about real things, about a week in March when Adrian, in the middle of a brutal deal, disappeared back into his worst self for 6 days straight, and Ava, for the first time in the relationship, genuinely wondered whether she had made a mistake. They had a bad, long fight about it on a Saturday night. She cried. He did not cry. He said things that were not kind because he was tired and she was pushing, and she said things that were not kind because she was hurt and he was defended. They slept in the same bed that night without touching. In the morning, he brought her coffee. Black, the way she took it now. Ava. Yeah, I'm sorry. Me too. I have been the worst version of myself this week. I know. I know you know. I'm saying it anyway. Adrian. Yes. I'm not going anywhere. No? No, I'm mad at you, but I'm not going anywhere. He put his head down on her shoulder. They sat like that for a long time. She did not tell him it was fine, because it wasn't fine. He did not ask her to say it was fine. They had both by then gotten a little better at letting a thing be unfinished. But a year and a half after the coffee shop on 68th, on a Saturday morning in early June, Adrian took Ava upstate to a town in the Hudson Valley, where, it turned out, his father used to take him on weekends as a child. They stayed in a little inn. They walked along a river. They ate at a restaurant where the menu was on a chalkboard. On the second night, over dinner, he reached across the table, and he took her hand, and he said, "Ava, I would like to ask you something." "Okay? I do not have a ring with me. I would not have known what ring to buy. I would like us to pick one together." "Adrian, I would like very much, if it is something you would also like, to marry you." Ava looked at him across the table, at the small scar, at the gray that had come in over the course of a year and a half, noticeably more at his temples, at the man who had, 18 months earlier, stood in front of a window on the 42nd floor of a building in Midtown Manhattan and said, "I've seen you for 4 years. I was waiting for you to notice." "Okay. Okay? Okay, Adrian, yes. Okay. Yes?
Yes. God, yes. 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 Yes.
He did not stand up and make a scene. She did not cry at the table. They simply held hands across the little wooden table in a restaurant in a town neither of them lived in, and they looked at each other and they ate the rest of their dinner with their hands held across the table. And on the walk back to the inn, he did not try to lift her off the ground or kiss her under a streetlight. He walked beside her, with her hand in his, in a small town in June, under a sky that was still a little light at 8 p.m., and he said quietly, more to himself than to her, "I didn't think this was ever going to be a thing I got to have. I know, Adrian. I was prepared to not have it. I know. I am going to take a while to get used to having it. I know. You are very patient with me. I'm not patient with anybody else. I know that too." They were married the following spring, in a very small ceremony upstate. Her father, Adrian's mother, Claire, Mia, Laura, Eleanor, Helen Shaw, who nobody had expected would come, and who came and who cried, very slightly, at the vows, which nobody had expected either, and a total of 14 other people. Adrian's brother's photograph, the one from the walnut desk, was on the little table next to the officiant. Nobody explained it to the guests. It did not need explaining to the people who needed to understand. Her father walked her down the aisle, which, in this case, was a path through a field. He was wearing a suit Ava had bought him. His hands were shaking a little. Halfway there, he stopped, and he turned to her, and he said in a voice only she could hear, "Kid." "Yeah, Dad." "Your mother would have—" "I know, Dad. She's here." "I know. Your mother is here, Ava." "I know, Dad." She did not cry at her own wedding until that moment. After that, she cried freely, in front of everyone, and did not try to stop. But the wedding is not where the story ends. The story ends, really, 2 months later, on a Tuesday morning in June, in an office on the 42nd floor of a building on Park Avenue, where a young woman named Priscilla Ngo, 24 years old, 3 weeks into her first job out of business school, accidentally sent a voice note to her entire team. It was not about Adrian. It was not about anyone important. It was a venting voice note to a friend about an associate on her team, and she had sent it by reflex to the wrong Slack channel. And now her entire team of 11 people had heard her call the associate, in a very specific and colorful phrase, an asshole. Priscilla was, when Ava found her, crying in a stairwell. Ava sat down on the step next to her. She did not say anything for a minute. She let Priscilla cry. Then, quietly, without looking at her, she said, "It's going to be okay." "Oh my God, Ms. Carter, I am so sorry. I didn't see you. Priscilla. "Yes? It's going to be okay. I'm telling you this because I know." "Ms. Carter, you're going to go back upstairs. You're going to apologize to the associate, in person, with your whole chest. You're going to say it once, and you are not going to say it again. You are going to go to the bathroom, and you are going to put cold water on your face. You are going to sit down at your desk, and you are going to get back to work, and by Friday this is going to stop being the biggest thing in the world." "Miss Carter, everyone heard. Everyone heard. I know, Priscilla." Priscilla looked at her, at the senior associate with the 3 accounts of her own, at the woman whose name was on a memo Priscilla had read on her first day as an example of elegant strategic writing, at the woman who was, not incidentally, married to the managing partner. And she said, "I feel like I've ruined my career." Ava looked at her for a long moment. Then she laughed. A real laugh. A laugh that surprised Priscilla, and that, in surprising her, stopped her crying. "Priscilla." "Yes? Can I tell you something? Please." "The worst mistake I ever made at this firm was a voice note." "What? You heard me? I don't... You're joking." "I am not joking. Ask anybody who was here 4 years ago. Ask Mia in strategy. Ask Priya at the managing partner's desk. Actually, please don't ask anybody. But it happened. And I thought, that morning, that I was going to get fired. I thought I was going to lose everything. And instead, Priscilla, the single worst thing I ever did at this firm, turned out to be, in ways I could not have understood at the time, the beginning of the best thing I ever did." Priscilla was staring at her now. "Ms. Carter?" "Yeah. That's the voice note?" "That's the voice note, Priscilla." I thought that was just a legend." Ava laughed again.
It is a legend. It's also true. Both things can be true. She stood up. She offered Priscilla her hand. Priscilla took it, and Ava pulled her to her feet. Listen, Ava said, I'm not going to tell you that mistakes don't cost anything. They do. Yours is going to cost you something today, and maybe this week. But here's what I want you to know, and I want you to remember it. The people at this firm who are worth anything are not going to judge you forever for a mistake. They are going to judge you for how you handle the mistake. If you handle it well, if you apologize, if you don't make excuses, if you do better work tomorrow than you did today, the mistake becomes a story you tell your associates when they are crying in a stairwell. If you handle it badly, if you hide, if you blame someone, if you let it get smaller in your own mind than it actually is, then it stays a mistake and it follows you and it grows. The mistake is not the thing, Priscilla. The mistake is never the thing. What you do after the mistake, that's the thing. Priscilla looked at her. Her mascara was ruined. Her face was blotchy. She nodded slowly. Okay, Ms. Carter. Go wash your face. Yes. Apologize to the associate. Yes. And Priscilla. Yes. The next time you're about to send a voice note, check the channel. Twice. Yes, Ms. Carter. Go. Priscilla went. Ava stood in the stairwell for a long moment by herself, one hand on the railing, listening to the click of Priscilla's heels fading up the concrete stairs. And she thought about a morning 4 years ago, about a cab driver with a gray mustache who would not speed, about a blazer that had been 2 sizes too small, about a woman standing in the doorway of her own office looking at her like she had just seen a ghost. She thought about the man up on the 42nd floor right now, probably at his desk, probably reading, probably with a cup of black coffee going cold next to his laptop. And she thought about how, if someone had told that terrified 31-year-old woman in the elevator what her life was going to look like at 34, that she would be a senior associate on track for partner, that she would be married to a man she had been afraid of, that she would have a small apartment she loved and a father who called her every Sunday, and a daughter coming in February, a daughter they had not told anyone about yet, a daughter whose existence was a secret she and Adrian carried between them like something warm in a pocket. She would not have believed it. She would have laughed, bitterly. She would have said, "You have the wrong person." She would not have been wrong to laugh. The thing about your own life, Ava was beginning to understand, was that you almost never got a preview, and when you did, you almost never believed it. The best things in a life did not arrive when you were ready for them. They arrived, more often than not, on the mornings you overslept by 42 minutes, in elevators where you were too tired to check the channel, in moments you would later describe to your closest friend as the worst thing that ever happened to me, and also, somehow, the thing that saved me. She took her hand off the railing. She walked up the stairs. She came out on the 42nd floor, in her blazer that fit now, in her shoes that did not give her blisters, in a body that had learned, finally, to eat lunch. She walked past the break room. She walked past the conference room where, in a previous life, she had sat in one of Mia's blazers and watched a man change the direction of her career in 3 sentences. She walked past the corner office with the 2 walls of glass. Adrian was at his desk. He looked up when she passed. He did not smile. He did not wave. He did what he always did, what he had been doing, now, for more than 2 years, at every hour of every workday. He looked at her for half a second, and in the half second she understood exactly everything he was saying, and in her half second back to him, she said everything she had to say. And then she was past his door and walking down the hall, and the day was continuing, and the firm was humming, and her desk was waiting for her with a cup of cold coffee and a list of things she had not finished yet. She sat down. She opened her laptop. Outside the window, New York was doing its thing. The cars on Park Avenue, the tiny figures on the sidewalk 42 floors below, the silver-gray river of Midtown moving around her the way it had moved, indifferent and bright, every single day since she had stepped off a plane from Chicago at 27 with a single suitcase and an apartment lease she could not afford. She thought about Priscilla, down in the stairwell, putting her face back together. She thought about her mother, who had been dead for 4 years now, and who, in Ava's bad moments, still felt like she had been dead for 1, and in her good moments felt like she had been gone for only as long as it took to step into the next room. She thought about the voice note, the original voice note, the 11 words that had started all of this. Arrogant, but dangerously attractive.
She thought about whether, if she could go back, she would unsend it. She smiled, very faintly, to herself at her own desk. She would not. She would send it again. Louder, if she had to. She would send it on a Monday morning in October to 573 people, and she would wear the wrong blazer and oversleep by 42 minutes, and she would stand in her office in borrowed clothes while her assistant looked at her like she was a woman watching a building burn. And she would walk the long hallway to a corner office and sit across from a man with gray-green eyes, and she would say yes to a life she could not, at the time, have imagined she deserved, because the mistake she understood now was the door. The mistake was always the door, and the only thing that had ever been required of her, then or since, was the courage to walk through it. She opened the file on her screen. She started typing. Outside her office, Mia said something about lunch. Down the hall, a phone rang. The elevator dinged. Somebody laughed. The firm kept humming. Ava Carter, 34 years old, senior associate at Wolf & Sterling, pregnant with her first child, married to a man she had once, in an elevator on a panicked Monday morning, called dangerously attractive into the wrong microphone, went back to work. The story, in the way that stories do, went on. But the part that mattered, the part she would tell her daughter one day, years from now, on a Sunday afternoon in a kitchen upstate, with Adrian out back in the garden and the afternoon sun coming through the window, and a little girl sitting on a stool next to her asking, "Mom, how did you meet Dad?" That part of the story was already, by the summer of that year, complete. It had started with a mistake. It had ended, as the best stories do, with two people who chose, over and over, every morning, with their eyes wide open, to stop pretending. And that, Ava thought, closing her laptop at 6:45 that evening, picking up her coat, turning off her desk lamp, walking toward the elevator in the same sensible shoes she had worn every day for the last 6 months. That was going to be enough. That was, in fact, going to be everything.